Welcome along, ladies and gentlemen, to the Green Hell and to the Nordschleife for tonight's RaceRoom 2.4 hours of the Nürburgring. It's one of the toughest tasks in all of motorsport, particularly in sim racing. And before we get going in the GT3s, we've got a 3-lap support race in the M2CS. It's my name, Darren Thacker, joined up in the booth by Zach Sweeney. Chris is pushing all the buttons, making the broadcast look wonderful. But Zach, Nordschleife, it's a historic circuit. It's one of the greatest in motorsport. What are we expecting from this support race in these M2CSs?
Hopefully a lot of carnage, hopefully a lot of chaos and excitement all the way through. I mean, we're in some fantastic machinery. Of course, the BMW M2CS. We saw it a couple of days ago to kickstart the RaceRoom Ranked Championship in 2024. And some fantastic racing took place over in Assen. Of course, the Nürburgring itself, we've got most of the GP loop and, of course, the full Nordschleife, which is probably one of the biggest tests in motorsport as a driver. It tests you, it tests the car, it tests your confidence all around, and it should be a lot of fun to set us up for what's going to be 2.4 hours of fantastic racing afterwards.
Yeah, and I'm sure all of these drivers have been absolutely fixated on this circuit this afternoon. Nothing else to distract them in the motorsport world whatsoever, so it'll be interesting to see how it's all going to unfold. But of course, as I mentioned before, we've got the 2.4 hours coming later on. We have got the support race coming up in just a minute. 24 minutes will equate to about 3 laps in the cars that we'll be using. And then we will move on to qualification and the race for the 2.4 hours. It's the same format we've had for the last couple of years, Zach, and it's worked quite well. And it's lovely to see that we've got more support races on this year, giving some more drivers a chance to get in on the main event.
Yeah, I love them. I think the support races are really good because it gives us a little bit of a teaser before we head into the main event. Of course, at this time last year when we did the Nürburgring 2.4 hour, those were a couple of fantastic support races. I think it was me and you talking over them this time last year as well when it came to the DTM and, of course, the WTCR races that we had, and they were amazing. From what I can remember of them, they were awesome. Of course, when we kickstart the year with the 2.4 hours of Daytona as well, we've had the MX-5s kickstart the action before we head to the main race. And again, these cars are so raceable, and sometimes we see names that we don't usually see on the main broadcast split of RaceRoom. Of course, anyone can get involved in these events, but you're determined to get into the top split based on your reputation and, of course, your overall rating as well. Sometimes it can be tough to get yourself into the top split. So coming onto the support race in slightly slower cars, but still should bring some good racing, I'm sure.
Yeah, good racing, 87 corners, it says there on the circuit, and I'm sure, Zach, you know the names for absolutely every single one of them, and I'm excited for you to list them off as we get into the race. But we've got about 75 kilometres worth of racing over the course of these 3 laps. Looking forward to seeing what some of these drivers could do. Looking at the lineup that we were given before this race, Zach, I did notice that Chris was on the list, so I was hoping that we might see him racing, but I don't think we're going to be given that pleasure.
No, unfortunately not. He's going to be too busy making the broadcast look as fantastic as it always does, and as amazing of a multitasker I'm sure he is, driving while also controlling cameras for a broadcast. Probably a little bit too difficult for him, but some other names up there, of course, Peter Daniel, Hendrik Lichtenhagen as well, Timo Piper, the top 3. There you can see a list of them in order of their ratings. Of course, a combined of your safety and your sort of your skill level essentially combined together, formulated, and that spits out your rating. Anything really over 1,700 or so, and you're really looking to be in the top echelon of drivers. That's why we've got Peter Daniel, Lichtenhagen, of course. We see them a lot of times in the top split racing, and they've decided to take to, of course, the support race here today. But a couple of other drivers that maybe we haven't seen before as well, and they'll be looking to prove themselves.
Couple of new names in this order. You look further down, the lower rating you get generally, the more unlikely you are to see them in a ranked event, but great to see some more drivers getting in on the act. Lots of Germans you'll notice in the order, but particularly the likes of Lichtenhagen, the Brazilian, who was featured very heavily in Wednesday's RaceRoom Ranked Championship event at the Assen circuit. So definitely some, you could say some practice going on there, but you couldn't really get more different in terms of the circuit. For these drivers as well, though, with the larger gaps in terms of the rating, are we going to expect to see the times become a little bit wider, the gaps to eke out a little bit, or do you still think the rating is going to be nice and close?
To be honest, I mean, I'm just having a look at the live timing of qualifying at the moment. The gap at the top, considering, it's a 9-minute lap time, Peter Daniel and Timo Piper are only separated by 2 seconds. But of course, when it comes to the race and consistency, it's a whole different ball game as well. And should hopefully keep it nice and close. I mean, you're right. Sometimes differences in ratings can cause a bit of a skill gap, but this car, I mean, it's a nice sort of entry level, I suppose, kind of into sort of getting into faster rear-wheel drive cars. Of course, 450 brake, just over a ton and a half metric in terms of kilograms as well. So it's not the biggest of handfuls, but it still has a decent punch, and it's a fairly driver-safe car to jump into. So, of course, the biggest test, I think, is going to be the circuit itself. I think we can still see some close times, though. Of course, qualifying can only tell us so much. The race will tell us a whole different amount. I think it just depends as to how chaotic the start is.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say getting off the line is going to be so important here. 3 laps of the Nordschleife, it's fair to say, difficult to overtake. There aren't really many opportunities, and with only two times going at full pace down towards the opening corner and 3 times going into the end of the lap through the Dottering Ahoa, there's not really going to be too many chances for these guys to really make these moves stick. So even though we have a small grid, I think, like you said, the opening couple of corners, the opening tour of the GT loop is going to be really quite indicative of where we see some of the drivers finishing their races. Petter Daniel, you can see him on a lap here. He won't be getting to the line in time to finish this lap. Of course, as we all know, at this point in the RaceRoom platform, when the timer hits 0, that is the end of the session. You cannot finish the lap you are on. That is it. The cars stop. You can be 3 inches from the line. Lap will not count. So I believe that pretty much means that we have our grid order set in stone, and it will be Petter Daniel on pole from Timo Pippert.
Should be a fantastic race. Then, of course, they're trying to maximise their track time. Still got 2 minutes of a lap to use, and that's still track time that you can sort of bed yourself in, maybe because the lap times are now sort of meaningless as such, as Lichtenhagen actually moves his way up into P3, only 1.2 seconds off, and the top 3 separated by 1.2 seconds is going to be telling, I hope, of a fantastic race. But just gathering whatever experience you can, because of course it's going to be a long time before they're back racing their way through this particular sequence of corners. And on that opening lap, we've spoken as to how important it might well be. If you can find an edge or sort of iron out some issues, you could well have the advantage in that opening lap. Not only necessarily to close the gap, but say you're out in front and you want to get away, which I think is also going to be really important for the pole position driver, of course, at the moment, Petter Daniel. Well, it will be Petter Daniel, of course. He's going to need to get away. So if he can sort of nail this final part of the lap, that could help him in doing so, even if it's only by a couple of tenths of a second.
Bit of a confidence booster as well, working his way into the race. I mean, being on pole by a second is going to help in that regard, no doubt. But with Pippert and Lichtenhagen so close together, I think they're really going to be looking to get that edge off of the line. Ohak, Stull, Willems, you can see those times really, really dropping away as you progressively go down the order with Egberg and Schramm. In 8th and 9th, the 2 Germans getting to nearly a minute off of the lead time. But also quite a satisfying time in from Petter Daniel that it is a 9 minutes 0.042, which couldn't get much better, if we're honest, in terms of the satisfaction level. But there we go for the grid. There is his pole time, just over 9 minutes. We definitely will be getting 3 laps in this race. Timo Pippert will be lining up alongside. Lichtenhagen and Ohak in 3rd and 4th. Stull and Willems round out the 3rd row. Lindgren and Egberts in 7th and in 8th, with Schramm and the Finnish driver racing in P10. I haven't said a lap time. We'll see if they are going to be in the race. But as we mentioned, Zach, small field. It means that there's not going to be too much room for big incidents, for big pile-ups. This first lap's going to be crucial. How you're going to get off the line is going to be crucial. But is there an element of just biding your time and trying to wait for that final run up the Dottering Ahoa?
To a degree, but also the Nordschleife track position is going to be so paramount. I mean, I know the M2 is a really raceable car, and in terms of that, well, I mean, with how it's quite narrow, it's quite a raceable car, not a lot of downforce, things like that. You can get moves done on the Nords, but it's going to be so much easier if, for the minute and a half or whatever it is on the GP loop before we get onto the Nordschleife, if you can make up some places, you're already going to be setting yourself off on the right foot. If you bide your time too much and say you start P5 and you could work your way up into P3, but instead say P5, you've then got to wait, 7.5 minutes before you can realistically try again for another overtake?
Yeah, and that's a consideration I think these guys are going to have to take in. I think, 24 minutes, it's still a while. 3 laps, 27 minutes really in change when we do the 3 laps in total. It's going to be a lengthy race. We're looking at the length of more of a longer ranks championship event that we see weekly at this stage of the year. But they're going to have to be keeping their focus, keeping their control of the car. And also, if anybody's doing both of the races, the support race and the 2.4 hours that's coming up in a bit, they'll end up doing more racing than the drivers did in the real 24 hours of Nürburgring this season, with that being cut so short. There was barely any racing at all. So concentration definitely going to be key. But yeah, I think really that the flashpoints in this race, getting off the line, making sure you stay close, maybe trying to force your opponent into an error could be quite key.
I think so. Darragh Thacker kicking this broadcast off absolutely savagely. He is not taking any prisoners whatsoever. But yeah, I mean, you are going to need to make up some places quite early, and of course, make the most of every opportunity that you can, because when it comes to racing in these cars, especially sometimes actually with the gaps in qualifying that we've seen, you're going to need to make up some good starts. Anyway, 24 minutes.
Here we go then. 3 laps of the Nordschleife. We have got Petter Daniel on pole. Can he convert it? Lichtenhagen will be hoping for the run off the line, but the lights are out, and we are racing at the Nordschleife for the support race ahead of the 2.4-hour Nordschleife race. Petter Daniel and Pippert going down towards turn 1. Lichtenhagen just in behind as well, looking for the line to the inside. I'm not too sure if he's going to find it or the grass. Petter Daniel with a very wide line to the opening corner is going to allow Pippert up the inside, and he smashes his way through, not giving an inch to the Czech driver as they make their way through, cutting the opening chicane. And you can see Pippert getting that run towards the GP loop. He looks like he's ahead, but Petter Daniel, he's not going to let this one go as they make their way onto the GP loop.
Yeah, he's not happy with how that first corner went. He's going to want to fight back, and he does so outside line of the left-hander, inside for the right-hander. Lichtenhagen as well, looking to get involved there, nose to tail the top 3 as they approach the Dunlop hairpin. Petter Daniel will ride on board with him, looking backwards. Can the German launch a move to the inside? He is going to give it a good go, late on the brakes, but Petter Daniel sees it coming. There's contact, and Lichtenhagen might find a way through.
Yeah, Lichtenhagen picked up loads of positions at Assen in the midweek in the rank championship. Can he do the same again here at the Nordschleife? It's going to be more difficult, especially when we get in towards the green hell proper, but for the time being, I should say, Petter Daniel and Timo Pippert are trying to pull that gap. Daniel, luckily, to be back in the lead realistically. Pippert really did force his way through on the inside of the opening chicane, but he's made his way back through as the Czech driver, back into the lead. Now it's going to be difficult for him really to be losing it now without too much of a mistake. Lichtenhagen is the driver on the attack as he is pushing the German up through the final sector of the GP loop before they get onto the Nordschleife. But these top 3, they're leaving the rest for dead.
Yeah, they are, and I think, to be fair, we kind of expected that based on the qualifying times. Even though they've been battling, they've still been able to pull out a fairly decent gap. I mean, Ohak, Wilhelm, they're there, and a lot still can happen. Don't forget, the uncertainty of motorsport is why we definitely love it, but so far the top 3 seem to be sort of head and shoulders above the rest of the field, and hopefully it's going to be settling into a good race for them. It's Daniel Pippert and Lichtenhagen as they join the Nordschleife. Now they've got to settle in, hunker down, and try and go for some consistency.
Yeah, we'll have to see if anybody makes any kind of big error in this race. That's probably where we're going to see any kind of movement in the order in the next 2 and 3/4 laps. Of course, we're only a couple of minutes in to the opening lap. Petter Daniel, though, not being given much of an inch by Timo Pippert and Lichtenhagen as they make their way through the opening part of the Nordschleife ring. Ohak is keeping nice and close. The Slovakian driver not letting the rest get away with that 2.5 second gap, opening already to the Belgian Willems, and then to the the train of 4 Germans. There we go. 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th for Stull, Egbergs, Berger, and Schramm as they start dropping further off the lead. But you have to say already at this point in the race, Zach, Petter Daniel, Timo Pippert, and Lichtenhagen are the 3 drivers that are really going to be the ones trying to win this race.
The quartet, do you mean? Something?
Quartet, thank you. Thank you.
It is very rare I get to correct you. I'm going to take whatever chance I can get. Pippert, by the way, looking to the inside of Petter Daniel for the race lead as they run their way towards Arnberg. Of course, a decent overtaking opportunity if you sort of have a decent look, but Pippert on this occasion looking to back out of it. I think an issue for Jens Berger at the back end of the field as well. Falls outside of the top 10 and a couple of places swapped further back. But all eyes on the quartet out in front, but in fairness is actually settling itself more into this 2-horse race through the foxhole. Of course, the left very tricky, full of commitment, and both of our top 2 drivers of course dealing with it very, very well indeed. But Lichtenhagen, I mean, you can't ignore him. He is still firmly in contention.
Oh, he is. The Brazilian driver is not going to be letting the others get away. The only non-European in the field, of course, and he'll be hoping to maybe make something of a little mistake from the two drivers in front. Problem for Schramm in the background. He's maybe gone off the track somewhere, dropping down the order back into P10. I believe there was also a move from Stuhl to get past the Belgian driver Willems, which is now for P5. So moves further back. Not quite any moves up here at the front of the order, but Peter Daniel keeping Pippin and Lichtenhagen at bay for now. This is really going to be where we're going to see the rest of the race, isn't it, Zach? Bit of a holding pattern, maybe trying to see if Pippin and Lichtenhagen can pressure Peter Daniel into a mistake. But Peter Daniel really just needs to focus on the exits onto the straights, and it's going to be difficult for the rest to really catch him.
Pretty much, yeah. Just put the car where it needs to be, and there's not really much that the drivers behind can do. I mean, that's what we're saying when it comes to the Nordschleife. It is just going to be a case of keeping your nose clean, settling into a rhythm, and waiting for the GP loop, or of course the Dottinger Höhe towards Tiergarten, and that's also a golden opportunity to get a move done. But for Peter Daniel, at the moment, he is where he belongs. I mean, he's settled right into a natural groove, and that car looks to be on rails as it pulls the gap ahead of Pippin more and more. And like you say, as long as he's quick on the exits, as oh my goodness me, is that more issues? I think it is. Elmo Racing and Jens Berger might have had it coming together, and that's issues further back down the top 10.
Yeah, and Schramm, who's out of this race, is maybe going to be joined by the Finn, not in the distant future. Looks like it's not been the best of starts, and not even half a lap in, really. We've got one driver out of the race, one driver close to a minute off of the lead as well. So, there are a couple of drivers dropping off the back already, but we've still got this top three close together. I think this is going to be kind of where we are for the next 24 minutes or so in this race, we're being honest, Zach. These three look very, very close together. They're coming up to the carousel shortly. But Pippin a little bit wide, maybe. Lichtenhagen giving him a little bit of a love tap as they make their way through towards the carousel now. But Peter Daniel will be loving to see these little errors from the German, going a little bit wide again onto the grass, and he's just shipping a tenth and a half with every single one of these mistakes.
Yeah, and that's going to be chipping away more and more at the gap. The slipstream through the Dottinger Höhe is going to be so vital for both Pippin and Lichtenhagen. I think what we saw with Lichtenhagen just closing the gap and giving Pippin a little bit of a love tap to the back end was just him saying, come on, let's just go. Sort of synonymous to anyone in karting, the tap to the side of your helmet to sort of say, let's go and catch. That sort of body language just to say, there's no point battling. If I overtake you, you're going to try and overtake me. We're going to get into this useless tussle and we'll lose what could be a chance for the race lead. We work together, we bide our time, and we try and push to stay with Peter Daniel, because as soon as that man is gone, I think, provided, unless there's mitigating circumstances like a mistake or whatever, there's going to be a very, very tough time catching him.
I think you're right. I mean, we keep seeing Pippin here as we follow him. He's just making all these little errors. The car is not looking stable. It's sliding all over the place. It doesn't look like it's a particularly comfortable drive at the moment here for the German. But despite that, he's been gaining a couple of tenths in the last minute or two since we've come out of the carousel, and he is as close as he has been really since we got onto the Nordschleife part of the loop. So he looks like he's in control, even though it doesn't really seem like the car is too happy with the demands that he is giving it. Lichtenhagen is still in here as well, keeping tabs with the others, but again, that gap back to Ohak and then back to Stuhl growing ever more. I mean, you've got to feel slightly bad, don't you, for David Ohak? I mean, he's already 4 seconds behind the car in front. He's got 8 seconds to the car behind. He's just leading a bit of a lonely race already at the moment.
He is all by himself as they run their way through a very committed part of the circuit, it must be said. You can see a little bit of airtime, but yeah, I mean, you're right for Ohak, but at the end of the day, I mean, he's still got sight of the top 3. As long as he keeps it clean, anything goes wrong for Daniel, Pippin, Lichtenhagen, and immediately, P4, it's like, yeah, top 5, could have been a podium, whatever. Any issues, and he's there, and he's on the podium, potentially back into contention for the race leads should circumstance allow. He cannot become demoralized. He's just got to run his own race, get his head down, churn in the lap times, and yeah, to a degree, kind of hope that something goes wrong for those up in front, but at the very least, he's not going backwards.
He's not going backwards. Willems is going backwards, though. The Belgian driver out of this race now, which means we've now had 3 casualties of the green hell in the first lap alone. First 2/3 of the lap, really. Meaning that we've only got 8 left running. And one of those drivers is the Finn, who is a long, long way off the back. Here comes Timo Pippert, though, in that slipstream, looking for the outside line, not looking for any kind of bump draft. He's not really got any time for that in this 3-lap sprint race. But we'll see him get in front of Petter Daniel as they make their way in towards this fast right-hander. Timo Pippert just about hanging it on, not touching the grass, which we've seen him do a couple of times over the lap. And Pippert into the lead. 2 laps to go, so still chances for Petter Daniel to use that slipstream that we've just seen. But Timo Pippert, track position is going to be key. Let's see if he can keep it.
Yeah, he's going to want to as well, because what this does is if he's able to stay ahead for the duration of the whole next lap, and then Daniel re-overtakes him, Pippert is then back behind him on that final lap to re-overtake him on that run to the line. So if we are playing that game of chess, this could be beneficial for the German. Of course, does go slightly defensive into T1, misses the apex. Daniel looks to go to the inside. Of course, he runs out of room because he has to quickly turn left to make turn 2. Pippert is then able to stay ahead. Lichtenhagen is there waiting for these two to battle a bit more so he can re-close that gap. But as things stand, Pippert looks fairly comfortable in that race lead.
Petter Daniel looked like he may try and get that switch back, but Timo Pippert covering it off by taking a tighter line through turn 2, not allowing any kind of cutback for the Czech driver to try and gain an advantage as they run down into the corner, where Petter Daniel retook the lead, of course, on the opening lap. Pippert, though, still looking a little bit defensive. Petter Daniel taking an aggressive line, making it look like he's going to the inside, trying maybe to put off the German from his line. But while these two fight, Lichtenhagen still sitting there in the background, keeping tabs with the others, not letting them get too far away, and telling, particularly Petter Daniel, if you make a mistake, I'm going to be right on top of you to make, to capitalise on it.
And that's the pressure you've got to apply as a driver in sort of any degree. Of a trainers, oh my goodness me, a huge slide there for Timo Pippert. Caught the curb on the outside. That sent the car a little bit sideways, as you naturally want to swing the car back over to the left to maximise the right. Just got a little bit sideways. He was able to hang on to it, thankfully. Quick hands in order to do so, and keeps Petter Daniel behind. He needs to, just through this final chicane of the GP loop, of course, a very fast layout. Of course, you've got 2, you've got the slightly slower one, and then you've got this one, which really flows nicely left into the right, then of course onto the Nordschleife, and Pippert crucially stays ahead for the GP loop, and now he's got to focus on hitting those apexes and getting those exits.
For a second there, I really did think that Petter Daniel was going straight into the back of the German, but luckily no contact. They're both pointing in the right direction, and they are pounding around the Nordschleife now, trying to gain the advantage. Lichtenhagen's still here. We'll see him here the whole time, I'm sure. And even David Ohak. I mean, if these three all come together at the same time, and you can never rule something like that out here at the Nordschleife, Ohak will be on hand to work his way through and maybe turn P4 into a P1, but that would take quite a big instant, I would have thought, between these three. But we've seen some slides, we've seen some moments, and we really can't rule it out. If there's one big moment from Timo Pippert here, maybe going a little bit sideways, both Petter Daniel and Lichtenhagen could get caught up in it. So this race, really, you have to say, far from over.
It really is. That's just the challenge, of course, of the Nürburgring as they go over Flugparts, of course. Not got a huge amount of downforce of these BMWs, but they still have a decent amount of power, and their top speed is fairly decent. So up over that crest, it can be possible to get some air. Looking backwards on Timo Pippert, here comes Petter Daniel and, of course, Lichtenhagen. The slipstream so powerful as they head their way towards the quick left-hander, side by side, bit of contact, and the margin for error at that speed is so slim, but they manage to hang on to it into the braking zone, and Pippert stays ahead for now, but the tension is through the roof.
Yeah, and all of this is just allowing Lichtenhagen even closer to the back end of Petter Daniel. So as they plunge down the hill, once again, Petter Daniel, he looks like he's trying to use that slipstream, maybe looking for a move, looking to put Timo Pippert off of his line. Pippert again going slightly defensive, not using all of the track on the outside on the entrance to the corner. Petter Daniel just not able to get through just yet, as you'd expect. So tricky to make a move here at the Nordschleife. We've known it for so long. But Petter Daniel is really feeding it with full effect now. Another good line from him. He's really bump drafting Timo Pippert now down the hill as they plunge now, but still no move possible. Petter Daniel's going to really start getting annoyed. Maybe he's just sitting here waiting, thinking, I'll get him down the Dottringer Hoa.
Yeah, but in the meantime, apply as much pressure as you can, feel those mirrors, and make Piper look around. Of course, metaphorically looking over his shoulders, of course, looking in his mirrors, maybe even pressing a look back button if he's got one bound, just to sort of throw him off a little bit for Petter Daniel, get inside his head, live inside his head rent free. Say, yeah, sure, you're the one leading, but I'm the one with the psychological high ground. I'm the one that's not feeling as much pressure. I think Pippet definitely is feeling it. You can tell in the way he's driving, the car's getting a little bit away from underneath him. He's really struggling to hang on to the lead here. Couple of mistakes creeping in, but thankfully able to maintain that track position nonetheless. But Petter Daniel, he is just effortlessly staying right hooked underneath him.
He's getting to the stage of harassment now, wide from Timo Pippert. Here's Petter Daniel's opportunity. Can he make it work? No, he can't. Still trying to find a way through. I mean, Timo Pippert is going for defensive line after defensive line here, and it's compromising every single one of his exits. He may come undone now as Petter Daniel claims the inside through this sweeping left-hander. Not going to be able to make the move there, having to lift ever so slightly. It's allowing Lichtenhagen ever closer. These three, you could throw a blanket over them, quite frankly. Half a second between the top three. We're halfway through this race now, Zach, and we really are no closer to knowing who's going to come out on top. They are really just so close together.
And that's what we love about motor racing, isn't it? The uncertainty. It'd be boring if we know going into a race who is definitely going to win. Oh my goodness me, huge chunk off the curb there for Petter Daniel. And there goes Lichtenhagen through into second. He was waiting for an opportunity like that, and the momentum swung his way. He was able to find the gap and through into second. Daniel, with a huge bite of the curb there, has lost so much time. He needs to recompose himself, take a breath, and get back onto the top two. But Lichtenhagen, what a capitalization from him to now be the one to apply pressure for P1. What it does do, though, the drawback of this, he's got to look forward to attack, backwards to defend, and he's sandwiched between P1 and P3.
Yeah, he's really just trying to find his way through now, isn't he? I mean, it's difficult for Petter Daniel after losing that position, losing that time. He's got to refocus, got to get back into the zone and try and close back in on these two, which I'm sure he can do. He was on pole by over a second. And you can see how much quicker he was through the first part of the lap than Timo Pippert. Lichtenhagen sitting on the rear wing. Oh, as Petter Daniel goes very, very wide. I think he was just about on the AstroTurf there, but definitely kicking up some grass and some dirt as well. But these three, I mean, you could put in the case that they are front to back in terms of pace. You could say that Pippert is faster than Lichtenhagen, but you definitely say that Petter Daniel, the fastest of the three, he's got just over a lap to work his way through and up to the front once again. Going to be tricky, but you're not going to put it past him, especially with the pace that he's shown.
Oh, small mistake there from Timo Piper as well as they run their way back down the hill towards, of course, this left into the right. You continue a descent as well. Really do love that sequence of corners. Of course, particularly YouTube corner as well. Really good to nail if you can hit those apexes, but very, very difficult in its own right. And Piper just, again, a little bit wide, and the curbs here at the Nordschleife are lethal. You've got to be so careful in how much you can use, as there's a mistake from Lichtenhagen as well, trying to straight line that corner too much, and in the end, actually took a bit too much of the curb. And once again, Petter Daniel is back on his case. This is the one part of the circuit you do not want to be losing out on the leader, because you are so close to that all-important Dottingerhoe to set you up for that final lap.
And we'll see again if anybody gets the run. I mean, a little bit of a jump, a little bit of airtime there for Petter Daniel and for Lichtenhagen as they rise their way through this bumpy part of the lap. It's so tricky, isn't it, really? This final, you call it the sector of the Nordschleife, with all the bumps, with all the elevation changes that you don't necessarily get in the first half. A little bit wide, a little bit of a slide from Lichtenhagen, showing that maybe he can drift his BMW through some of these corners. But once again, they make their way through towards the Dottingerhoe ever closer. Can anybody get the run? Is Daniel close enough maybe to work his way through on Lichtenhagen? Oh, my word, there was definitely a moment there for Lichtenhagen, though, because he broke in the middle of the corner. Must have got a little bit off kilter in terms of the balance of the car, and that's completely ruined both of their runs towards the final part of the racetrack.
It really has. 8/10. Are you feeling the slipstream? Maybe. Is it enough? Not really. Of course, you're just going to run out of straight, and Piper, of course, that's going to give the advantage to him as he will lead the final lap of this race. Of course, they are going to close. The closer they get, the stronger the slipstream becomes. It exponentially increases the closer you get. Of course, Petter Daniel is going to know that. Is he going to give a bit of a bump to Lichtenhagen? We'll, of course, see as they run their way through the left in towards Tiergarten. He's not even close enough himself to launch an attack. What they have done is close the gap to around about half a second or so, but it's all about commitment. advertisement, and at the moment the German at the front has got exactly that in bucket loads. He grows the gap a little bit, again, just to minimize the pressure that he's going to feel. One more lap left to run here for the support race. Is Pippert from Lichtenhagen, from Daniel, the top three as they've been all race long, and we still do not know who's going to come out on top.
Yeah, well, let's see. Petter Daniel, I mean, you'd have to say he needs to get through on Lichtenhagen now when he knows that. He's trying to make it down the inside at turn 1. Has he gone a little bit too deep? There's a little bit of contact, but he's made his way through. If he gets the exit through turn 2, he's got this one done. And Petter Daniel is through on Lichtenhagen. He's now only got Pippert between himself and the win in this support race. Can he do it? I mean, we saw how Lichtenhagen was struggling, didn't we, with the car through really the entirety of that final sector. Petter Daniel wouldn't have been able to overtake 2 cars, you wouldn't think, on this final lap if he didn't get through, or with the mistakes, I should say, that Lichtenhagen was making on the lap before. He knew that. He knew he had to get his place up into P2 ahead of Lichtenhagen. Now he can go after Pippert. Now he can try and line it up for that final straight into the final chicane.
Exactly that. Of course, only time will tell. You've got to nail each and every single corner from here on in. Opportunities will be wearing thin as we approach the latter stage of this race. Just a third of it left to run. Lichtenhagen, of course, they're in third. And it's basically exactly as it was from the first lap, essentially, is how they are 1, 2, and 3. All of what's happened so far has been almost meaningless, as it's basically led to the same point anyway. A fresh slate then for the final run through the Nordschleife. It's Pippert from Daniel, Lichtenhagen, 1, 2, and 3. One more tour of the Nordschleife left to go. I don't know. Pippert, he seemed quicker through the corners that he's been able to nail, but he's had a couple more mistakes. That's not to say Daniel or Lichtenhagen has been perfect. They've all had their moments, but it seems that in terms of optimization, Daniel has got the measure over the rest of the other two, and he is very much applying the pressure in bucket loads as he did this time last lap.
It's defensive driving at its most critical, really, isn't it, for Timo Pippert? He's just using every single defensive line he can through the GP loop. As we get onto the Nordschleife, I'm sure he will make it no different, because Petter Daniel is clearly the faster driver at this stage. He clearly has more pace in his BMW if he can use it, but at the time, well, for the time being, he's not able to get through. Timo Pippert using those defensive lines, it's not really restricting his exits because he's just blocking Petter Daniel from getting the run. It's just meaning that Petter Daniel can't try and find himself to the inside of some of these corners. They plunge down the hill once again, but it's looking increasingly more likely that this is going to come down to the exit from the Dothringer Hoa down in towards the final chicane, because Pippert is just using every single line in the book. They're probably, they are seconds a lap off of what they were doing in qualifying, but it's just because of the lines that Pippert is taking and that Daniel can't use the pace that he's got at the moment.
He really can't, he's stuck behind, but that's the nature of track position, as oh my goodness me, it's getting very nip and tuck. As a lot of airtime for these BMWs, it must be said. Daniel, of course, closing the gap, but not a look. There is a huge look from Lichtenhagen, though, as the door closes. He takes a bite of the curb and has to back out, but as they run their way downhill towards the foxhole, and it is going to be maybe Pippert who stays ahead. Daniel, of course, just about able to run his way through, but down the hill towards the very quick left-hander, it must be said, and Pippert just able to stay in front, but it's getting very, very close indeed.
Oh my word, and a massive slide there from Lichtenhagen. I think that send, really, you've got to say, it was just to tell Petter Daniel, you can sit behind Timo Pippert, you can wait for him, you can use his lines, you don't have to be, 100% on pace through every single corner. But if you're not, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be ready to pick up the pieces, I'm willing to make a send at a place you may not expect. And so you've got to be on your toes, you've got to be trying to force your way through, because I want to make my way through as well. In towards, it's so close, isn't it, between these top three. Petter Daniel looking like he's going to go for the move. Pippert just using that defensive line. You can see him not using all of that track on the left-hand side. And it's just allowing him to not really compromise his exit because he's blocking it off for Petter Daniel, but just allowing himself to know that Petter Daniel's not going to be able to send it down the inside.
Yeah, exactly. But of course, Petter Daniel won the DTM support race this time last year, and what was a very hotly discussed fight for the lead with himself and Robert Weisenmüller at the front. He knows what it takes to win at the Nürburgring. Of course, he's going to try and make it 2 years from 2 to win a support race. He knows what he needs to do, and to be fair, he's showing all of the ingredients in order to win this race, applying the pressure, showing his nose, driving cleanly, and just riding under the rear wing of Pepper. But it just seems the German has got all of the answers to what Daniel is throwing at them. And at the moment, it seems that Pepper is looking composed enough to win this race. But of course, as we've said, this entire lap is effectively meaningless. Provided they're this close going on to the Dottingerhoe, that is going to be the pivot point. That is going to be the decider. From now until then, it's just going to be a case of trying to stay as close together as possible. Of course, Pepper, that's not going to stop Petter Daniel from applying the pressure to you, but he is very much dealing with it very, very well indeed. I'm honestly surprised we haven't seen more contact between these three. They've kept it so clean.
They really have. It's been really impressive driving, hasn't it, from all three of them. They have really not been able to control their car 100%. You could see them sliding, the rear end snapping, a few times going wide into the grass, particularly from Pippert and from Lichtenhagen as well. It was nearly, very, very nearly. Petter Daniel just rear-ending, tailgating Timo Pippert, possibly spinning him around, but they're still going firm. Lichtenhagen then nearly going to the back of Petter Daniel, and this is turning into congestion on the M25 pretty quickly, Zach.
Well, yeah, that's true. That is true. It is. To be fair, I've never quite been. I've never had that many close calls on the motorway, thankfully. But yeah, it has been like that since so many dashcam videos of people just nearly going kaput on UK motorways for one reason or another. Anyway, focusing at the front, Peppert versus Daniel. Lichtenhagen, of course, still very much in contention. Ohak running very much in no man's land, suspended really 7 seconds off the back of the top three, and he's got about 23 back to still in the top 5. Of course, the timer has ticked to 0, so this is the final lap of the race. And Daniel, the trust that you've got to have with your competitor to run this closely and not have a huge problem.
It seems to be huge problems, didn't we? In the Nürburgring, we got like 10 hours worth of racing, didn't we? We had, I think there were 3 car pileups, 1 driver going somersaulting after contact with 2 others. We've not had anything like that. We've had some fantastic clean racing. You could just see how close. Well, that's how close. Pretty much inside the rear end of that car was Petter Daniel. Timo Pippert is just getting pushed through the final part of the track. The problem for the German at this stage, really, is that, you can keep Petter Daniel behind for now, but we all know the run that Petter Daniel is going to be able to get off the Dottingerhoe if he stays in behind, but he's not going to wait for that now. He's gone straight through, Zach.
What a move. Saw the gap, put his foot down and took it. Petter Daniel, take a bow. We know he's got the pace. Now is the time to use it. He's not got long, mind you. He's got to be committed and get away from Pepper and Lichtenhagen just so that he's got a small slither of a chance through the Dottingerhoe to hang on to this race victory. Otherwise, he might well have compromised his position by taking the race lead. It sounds so backwards, but at a circuit like the Nordschleife with a straight as long as the Dottingerhoe, it might well be the case.
Yeah, I really wasn't expecting that. That really caught me off guard. Caught Timo Pippert off guard as well. Because you just think, wouldn't you, with the run that we've seen, off the Dottingerhoe down towards the final chicane, why would you choose to be in the lead? Why would you choose to give that slipstream advantage to the drivers behind? We're going to see it very shortly. Can Pippert close that gap? Lichtenhagen mistake as he comes off the corner, and he won't be in contention. But as they run their way down the final straight, Pippert is just going to be trying to attach a tow rope to Petter Daniel.
I think he's actually got a decent gap here. He's able to close in and use that slingshot. He's not going to stall behind Petter Daniel, but of course the Czech driver is not going to give this up without a fight. A flash of the headlights as Pippert closes in more and more. It becomes more menacing as they quickly flick their way to the left towards Tiergarten, and he is going to have a look. Of course, final lap of the race, and it comes down to this.
Yeah, can he make the move? Is he going to try and force it? He's not going to be able to get it into the Tiergarten. Can he get it on the exit? It's going to be looking difficult. Looking for the send. Maybe trying to cut the corner. I'm not too sure. But there's Petter Daniel. Is that going off the track? It is. Through comes Timo Pippert. Here comes Lichtenhagen as well. Who's going to take it on the line? Will Pippert give this one up? I don't think he will. Pippert will cross the line to win the race. In second place, it's Petter Daniel ahead of Lichtenhagen. And very, very nearly, as we mentioned before, did we see that incident between the top 2, and Lichtenhagen can come through. But regardless, Pippert, not too sure what the will be said about that after the race, but he cut the final corner, and he's crossed the line first, Zach.
Did a bit of rallycross. I didn't know there was a joke lap here at the Nordschleife, but he invented one, and went straight on. I don't know how that works. I've got to be honest. Lichtenhagen as well definitely could have capitalized, but I think just got boxed in by Petter Daniel, who was very stubborn as to not lose that position. But yeah, not the best finish that we could have had to that race. Nonetheless, it was very dramatic all the way through, just waiting for, of course, the rest of our finishers. But Pepper, yeah, I don't know, him and Petter Daniel across the line. I'm surprised that Pippa didn't get a slowdown or anything like that would have immediately bumped him down the order, but no idea what happened there, got to be honest. But nonetheless, as it stands, Pepper from Daniel and Lichtenhagen on the podium as, well, pretty much as they were after the first lap.
Yeah, I can't... again, not something I thought I'd see on the final lap there. We had two drivers off the track, and the final driver, Lichtenhagen, drag racing Petter Daniel up towards the line to try and take P2. I mean, Pippert, realistically, didn't take that corner properly, I think it's fair to say. If he was going to be getting any kind of time penalty for that, Lichtenhagen would really have been racing Petter Daniel for the win there. But regardless, they were the top three. David Ohak ended up crossing the line in fourth, probably just about seeing the carnage in front of him, thinking, what on earth is going on up there? But he finishes fourth, Stull finishes fifth, and Egbert's there, just crossing the line in sixth. We've got Lindgren as well, who's just coming through the Tiergarten to finish his race in seventh. And then we'll just be waiting for one more driver. But it just was such a close race, wasn't it, Zach? We saw those three drivers, Pippert, Daniel and Lichtenhagen, so close together for so long. And in the end, are we too surprised that it came down to a little bit of a contentious moment at the end?
Honestly, no. The tensions were brewing a lot that entire race. They were getting closer and closer, having looks into very sketchy parts of the circuit, coming very, very close to contact as well. Even from the first lap, that move that Pepper made on Daniel was very aggressive indeed, took the track away from him off the apex and on the exit. From lap one, they were really going from it from the get-go, and that was the tone for the entirety of the race. In the end, when the tensions boil and, of course, the desperation starts to creep in, the adrenaline, and, of course, that motivation to go and win, sometimes racing drivers will do almost anything to come out on top.
Yeah, they will. Yeah, quite a dramatic end to the race, I think it's fair to say. We've only got one more driver, as we mentioned, to cross the line. We'll wait to see if anything is done in terms of maybe a post-race penalty given in game for Timo Pippert, but we will see Petter Daniel regardless. Not too sure how pleased he will be. Not too sure what happened though with Petter Daniel. We saw him in the wall. Was there contact with Timo Pippert? It seemed that Pippert went a little bit wide, but did Petter Daniel maybe get a little bit of a tap, lose the rear end a touch, and then end up hitting the wall on the outside? Because it did seem weird that not just Pippert went off the track, but Daniel as well.
Yeah, obviously when you're running that close, it's easy to sort of line follow. You tunnel vision the driver in front, and if the driver in front makes a mistake, chances are in some capacity you're going to as well. And at that speed it is kind of hard to react. Maybe it was Daniel trying to avoid Pepper who went off, or when he tried to avoid there was an issue, and obviously in doing so he had an issue himself. But nonetheless, 3 laps of racing, it came down to absolutely nothing, and well, even then we still don't even know who deserved to win.
No, I think that's fair to say. But in the end, they are the results that we have got. And Timo Pippert is the winner after just over 27 minutes. Petter Daniel had the fastest lap, but just wasn't able to convert the pole into the win. And Lichtenhagen, 17 thousandths behind Petter Daniel. Side by side they were across the line. David Ohak and Stull, 4th and 5th. They were within a minute. And then we look further back. Egbers, Lindgren, and the Finn E-Racing not able to stay too close, but still finishing the race. The same can't be said for our 3 non-finishers. The Belgian Willems, Berger, and we had one other driver of Schramm in the race who weren't quite able to see the flag. But 3 laps of some really, well, 2 and 7/8 of some really high quality racing, I think it's fair to say, Zach. That final sector, that final corner, really the only point where we had a contentious moment between these top 3, and it was a delight to see all 3 of them race so close for so long.
It was. It's a shame that it ended the way it did, of course, but like when they were going into the left-hander in towards Arnberg as well, and the commitment that you had to show there was fantastic. It takes respect. All race long, Daniel being so close to the rear end of Pippert, and Lichtenhagen as well being involved. It takes trust, right? It takes 2 to tango, or 3 to tango in this scenario. They're doing it slightly differently, but they ran their way through and was so respectful to each other. Anyone else, any other 3 drivers, maybe it would have ended in chaos, you know, a lap previously. They waited until the very death when everything was ramping up into overdrive, 100, 101%, looking just for that extra edge over each other. But in the end, of course, ended how it did. But at least it wasn't a boring race.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But I think I don't watch Strictly, but I don't think you do either, because it's definitely only 2 to tango. I've never seen a tango with 3. Regardless, though, like you said, it was a fantastic race, fantastic support race. Before we get into the 2.4 hours of the Nürburgring, which will be coming up very shortly here, so don't go anywhere. We've got an ad, and then we will go in towards the 2.4 hours with 3 different faces for you to, that will be awaiting you. You don't have to listen to myself or Zach for very much longer whatsoever. But you will have to watch or talk to or listen to 2 golfers and a man with a beard. We'll let you decide who is who, but stick around because we'll see you when we're back for the 2.4 hours.
Do you also feel the same as this car enthusiast? He's reached his vehicle dream, but suddenly the original black wheels seem a bit boring. A colourful detail would add a lot more pep, and a little eye-catcher to match the paint would make the car perfect. Customization options don't only transform the wheel to visually match the vehicle, but also provides one-of-a-kind look on the road. The wheel color, rim protectors, center caps, valve caps, and even the wheel bolts can be configured and designed individually using style components of the new BBS Unlimited wheel system. And here's how it works. The BBS Unlimited base wheels are available in a total of 8 different colors, whether it be a glossy, satin, or polished finish, or from a deep indigo blue to racing gold to a rich bronze. Rim protectors are a colourful detail to visually enhance the wheel, while preventing damage from curb contact. In addition, the rim protectors can easily and quickly be replaced and renewed at any time. In total, 6 different designs are available. The center cap completes the wheel, so how cool would it be if it could also be customized? BBS Unlimited Style makes this possible. It's available in 56mm and 70.6mm diameters and can be applied in a variety of ways with the BBS logo. The center cap is available in 2D or 3D embossing, as well as in several color variations. And with the 3D rotation cover, the BBS logo remains visible to everyone, even when the car is in high gear. The valve caps complement the wheel in 6 different colors. This gives the individual wheel an even more coherent look. You can even choose the wheel bolt in the last step to match the wheel. Available in black, silver, and even titanium. With the help of the BBS Unlimited style components, you're able to create a work of art out of a conventional wheel, according to your own wishes and ideas. Just take a look at our configurator, and after a few clicks you can already start designing the perfect wheel for your vehicle. Do you have any questions about customization? Then contact the wheel expert now.
Hello everyone and welcome along. Of course, it is time for the 2.4-hour race. It is the main race time. 2 golfers and a man with a beard, apparently, is who's going to be taking you through this race. Of course, it's me, Lewis McGlade, it's Ewan O'Leary and Cam Roger for 2.4 hours of racing. Should be a fun one, always pretty dramatic, and hopefully we'll keep it moderately on topic this year, right, Ewan?
We can't make promises like that because we'll not keep them. But yeah, looking forward to going racing at the Nordschleife again. It was a couple of weeks since the real life 24 hours, of course, but that doesn't make it any less relevant. We should use a circuit all year round. It's fantastic. So much challenge round here and surprisingly good racing as well, as we just saw in that support race.
Yeah, indeed. We're expecting very much the same thing, right, Cam? A lot of wheel-to-wheel action, a lot of tactics when it comes to how to use the slipstream, particularly on the Duttinger Hoa.
Yeah, it's a very interesting track with how it races, to be honest, because you have a very tight, twisty section for basically best part of 20 kilometers, and all of a sudden you have a 5-kilometer stretch in a straight line. So it's a very much a game of tactics with the racecraft. But as you just saw a few minutes ago, you can really have some battles down in towards that final chicane. So I'm really looking forward to how they control that over the course of the race, because if you stay close to someone, you could save a lot of fuel, and that generally is quite important in these 2.4 hours for the strategy.
Yeah, certainly so. Well, of course, let's talk through the timetable for the evening as well. Plenty to deal with. Starting with qualifying. Of course, it's quite important to qualify nicely around here. It's not necessarily important to qualify on pole position, but it's more so about getting into position somewhere in the top 5 or 10 of the order before we'll move our way through into the 2.4-hour race itself. Slightly behind schedule, so they are in qualifying at the moment. Don't worry too much about it. Of course, the cars we'll be talking about, it'll be the GT3s. Plenty to deal with. Audi R8, BMW M4, Ferrari 296, McLaren 720, of course, the Mercedes AMG GT3, and the Porsche 911 GT3 as well. Lots of different variations in that, lots of struggles, I'm sure, to balance them all to make sure they're all on the right page. But to be fair, a good selection of cars, and there's your one. Big green monster, of course. Classic.
It's the best one, isn't it, really? Don't think we can have any arguments about that. No, what I was hoping to see when logged into the lobby earlier on is a bit of variety at the front of the field. Obviously, we're not going to get that in the single mate support race, but we do get it for the 2.4 hours, and we do have it in this lobby as well. Audi's very much up towards the 4. We've got a Mercedes in the top 10 as things running right now, a Ferrari in there, a McLaren, and a Porsche as well, all running inside the top 10 as things stand in qualifying at the moment. I know they're not all finished yet, and a lot of the drivers may well have their best times still to come. However, that's great variety to see. Almost all of those 6 manufacturers on your screen there represented in the top 10. The only one missing is the ugliest one, so I'll make no apology for that.
Which was the ugliest one?
Oh, it's BMW by a long way.
Don't you stop.
Yeah, fair. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, he's a Z4 kind of guy. It's okay. Of course, the circuit, obviously, we've just seen it race, and we all know it so well, is indeed the Nordschleife. The 24-hour layout, so to be fair, terrible first corner, and then the run around the Grand Prix loop before we head back out onto the Nordschleife. 87 corners. That is probably the lower end of the predictions of the amounts of corners around here, Cam. No one actually knows what the number is. I've seen as high as 185, as low as 87. No, I don't think I've ever seen lower than that.
Yes, 87 is an interesting one. I guess it depends what you count as a corner, because there's so many kinks around here, and they are probably the most interesting point when we get to some racing and side-by-side conditions, because there's plenty of long stretches here where you can try and go side-by-side, but no part of this track is straight apart from the Duttinger Höhe. So you have to, judge that well. You've got big curbs alongside you, especially if you think about going down to the Foxhole as well. It's a big long straight, but it's winding, it's twisting, and then you get the big curb. So definitely a tough track. And in general, the elevation change, so many, even normal Grand Prix tracks are fairly flat, but this is just absolutely ridiculous, the up and down that we have. So it makes the car very, very difficult to balance around here, and that's why we love it, because it's fast. It's you don't really want to go faster than a GT3 car around here, and that's exactly what we got.
Yeah, certainly are. Like I say, I think the 87 probably comes down to what's a named corner as opposed to just the fast kinks. It is quite a kinky track, of course, around here. Renzo Filipao, one of the ones to keep an eye on. Colin Blankenberg up there as well. Mate Mikiewicz, Sven Mackenberg as well. I see Marvin's out there on circuit. Also Ribeiro, Schwartz. Quite a few drivers that we're used to seeing at this kind of level. Even with some that maybe we haven't seen too much. There is Ewan's favourite, Gaspar Misch, out there as well. Can promise there will be some puns in this one. Sorry about that. He's okay with him. Ewan's not, so it's what it is.
Well, yeah, as long as he's okay with him, that's okay. You can knock yourself out. Yeah, just go for it. But plenty of names we're used to seeing, as you said, on this entry list, and that is a great thing. So many of high quality as well. I was talking about this in the latest ranked event on Wednesday. If you're above the 2,000 mark, you're a very good driver as far as RaceRoom rating goes. And look at Enzo Filippo's, it's unbelievable, really, 2,300 odd. And very, very strong driver indeed. But that doesn't necessarily mean he's definitely going to win. He'll certainly have a lot of challenge for that tonight.
It's too difficult of a track, I think, to have a predicted winner, purely because the mistakes around here. Remember, it's 2.4 hours on your own, And I mean, if you're doing sort of a 24-hour race, you may get into that sort of stint length. But on your own, it is tough, especially when they have this qualifying session before. There's a lot of driving and there's a lot of places to make mistakes around here. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone does a cheeky spin a bit later in the race when some important battles are coming.
So well, let's jump into qualifying, because I believe it is time to check out what's exactly happening on the circuit. About 4.5 minutes left to go of the qualifying session. Ribeiro currently at the top of the standings, but let's be honest, time's still coming in thick and fast, so it's really these laps that we're focused on. I can't remember off the top of my head. I do believe that Enzo is the #1 ranked player on RaceRoom, if memory serves. I have raced against him. You can imagine that I finished slightly behind him. And by slightly, I mean quite a long way behind him, because he's pretty good at racing. And I definitely, as much as to say about, we can't maybe pick a winner. Enzo is coming into this one, definitely is the favourite.
He's second best rated, by the way. I'll just do
Second best.
Yeah, do you want to have a guess who's first?
Actually, I wouldn't have thought it. No, who is
thought it.
first?
It's Shaw's Oizer. I've never seen him in one of these events before. But there you go. Just 6 points ahead. Six ratings, 6 points, 6 whatever ahead. So there you go. But nearly the best in the world, and certainly one of the best when it comes to being in one of these situations. Knows his way around a RaceRoom special event, that's for sure, and knows how to win one of these as well. So he'll be up there, but I mean, looking up and down, there's so many who could win here. Both from Mackenbergs are in the top 10 at the moment. Martin Miskovitz inside the top 5. Guillaume Vigneron, I haven't seen him for a little while in these events, but is 10th at the moment in qualifying as well. There's so many to choose from, and hopefully it's going to be one of those classic races, a close race, hopefully, over the course of the 2.4 hours when we get it going.
Oh yeah, I think it will be, but I'm interested to see the lap time that we're going to see here from Philip, of course, on a couple of purple sectors, but the sectors are so long as the track is still only divided into 3. But also if you do the maths on that, then it's something like 8-9 kilometers each one. A big slide though as he comes towards the end of the lap. And there's only a couple of corners to go at this point, a lot of straights, but you can see that you really have to work the wheel around him. This is the important corner coming onto the Dottinger Hub, because you don't want to touch the grass on the outside. You want to keep it as flat out as you can down the hill and get the momentum, because if you lose time, now you're sitting for a good couple of minutes just flat out, and hopefully you can finish this lap and maybe put on that pole position.
Yeah, I always used to really struggle with Galgenkopf coming out. Like they say, the right-hander, it tightens up quite a lot as you head through what is effectively like the first part, the first apex in a sense. It really does tighten up. It's really tricky to work your way through. But it was well worked there from Enzo Fidel as we work our way down towards Tiergarten and heavily onto the brakes, where we saw the dramas in the M2 CS racing cars. Just 2 minutes left to go in the session. As always, once this session sees 0 on the timesheets, the session will be over, and then we'll get the updated times. We don't have everyone's time on because we joined the session slightly late, so expect that one to potentially chop and change. However, he might be the #2 driver on RaceRoom at the moment, but he's trying to go #1 in this session. Enzo Filipao across the line. Ooh, not good enough. Has to settle for behind Ribeiro at the moment.
Yeah, very interesting that all came in the final sector as well. In the first 2, he was very strong according to those times, and just lost it all in those final moments. Ribeiro retaining the pole position at the moment. Wasn't there for the opening RaceRoom Ranked Championship event on Wednesday, but did set a time in the qualifying, private qualifying thing for it, the time trial beforehand, and was one of the top 10 fastest in the world, so certainly has his credentials. But I don't know if we've quite seen him in this position in a special event before. Maybe I'm misremembering, but he's certainly put in a good lap time around this circuit for this event, and looks like it's not going to be beaten in this final minute.
Yeah, potentially not. So that's a good one to settle the score. And don't be so worried by the obviously bigger gaps that you see. This track is very long. It's 5 times the length of a normal Grand Prix track, and it's very difficult to nail a lap in quali, so do expect the race to be a little bit closer than that. But here's this Fantastic coming out of the final corner himself in that 13th place, and across the line, so he's going to be nowhere near the pole position time, but across the line, is he going to do any sort of improvement from that 13th place? Yes, he is up into 9th.
Yeah, I think there was a couple of changes there, but the qualifying order will see Ribeiro starting from pole position. Enzo Filipao alongside in the front row. Colin Blankenberg and Mike Stoffmill up there in second and third. So we do have an Audi, a Mercedes, a Ferrari, and a couple of McLarens here. Mate Mikiewicz, and then we get the two Mackenbergs. So I'm sure we'll try and do something crazy on strategy. They always do. Schwartz, Titz, and Nel Del Rio, of course, rounding out the top 10. Behind that, we've got Ferdinand Coughlin, Guillaume Vigneron, of course, Zdenek Pech as well will be starting from 13th position. Frida Brown with Frank Van Roon, Mark Mitchmont, and then Gaspar Misch, of course, down in 16th. You could potentially say he's had a bit of a skill issue. Yeah, that's tough. It's fine. Of course, Liza there in 17th position. I can see the shake of the head from you already. Sorry. Lupus, Zitska, and then Balmania just at the back end of the top 20. Still 6 more cars to go. So we've got Philip Bock, Zach Silver, Jan Klein Ridder, of course, Christian Weitzel, Frank. Oh, well, never mind. We'll get the rest of them later on as we'll head into the race. Qualifying over, though, let's be honest. I think if you qualify in the front 3-4 rows, you should be all right.
I think so. I would put it down to the front 3 rows for me. Top 6 is sort of where you want to be. But then again, you know, can we say Sven Mackenberg's definitely not going to win because he's on the 4th row? I mean, no, he's still 7th. He's still up there. But it is important to qualify well here. Don't forget how difficult the opening section to the Nordschleife is when we get on there for the first time. You're not going to be flying through, making moves for the first 5 or so minutes of the race like you might do at a normal circuit. You'll find it very difficult to overtake when this race gets underway.
Absolutely. The main overtaking opportunity is on that back straight. So as Ewan says, got to wait 20 odd kilometers before you get there on that first lap. And realistically, you may have to wait every lap to get to that point. Of course, you can dive it down the inside of turn 1 as well, but that is a little bit sketchy. So I do think track position is important around this track. However, I am very interested to see these strategies. Is someone going to try and eke it out? Is many people going to actually eke it out to be a 1-stop and obviously save the fuel there? Or are they going to push and try a 2-stop, which can be quite beneficial around here if you can get yourself into some clean air?
I say it's a tricky one to deal with. There's lots of different options for you to take around here, but it's always going to be about surviving the start down into turn 1 and turn 2. Whilst I talk about the mediocrity of that certain circuit in the French countryside, we still have the worst corner on planet Earth around here. It is turn 1 and turn 2. It is certainly up there. I absolutely despise it. It always causes problems. The rest of the track is great, but turn 1 and turn 2 is, well, it's a crime.
You mean of the Grand Prix circuit, I'm presuming?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The opening chicane is very much subject to a bit of abuse, let's say, because it is a bit odd. It does feel a bit odd, but then again, I don't think it hurts the racing too much, to be honest, and it's obviously logical for real life. But yeah, I don't hate it, but it's a very awkward one to drive. That's for sure. I think this circuit just overall is just very difficult. That's where a lot of my hatred comes from this circuit. It's just the fact that I'm not very good at it.
Well, we'll see the race start anyway. We'll come back to Cam and his opinions in a few moments' time because we are underway for the 2.4 hours of Nürburgring here at RaceRoom. And of course, that race down towards the first corner. It's an excellent start there from the pole sitter Ribeiro, who hold on to the race lead down to the first corner. Blankenberg straight up into second position, trying to get down the inside. Bit of contact as well as Stoffmill getting pushed out wide with the back. Mate Mikiewicz all over the rear end. Not a good start, though, from Enzo Filippo from the front row.
Particularly dropping down to 4th position, but it's not as bad as for Istvan Titz, I'm afraid. Straight into the wall out of turn 2, off into the grass. Not sure who put him there, but I'd imagine got some assistance on the way out of that first chicane for the opening lap of the race.
Yeah, tricky issues already. I wonder if there's some contact or if that was just spinning up. It was getting a little bit wide maybe onto the grass. It is tough. It's very wide and then it narrows up very quickly. So you have to be careful of your spatial awareness around there. But it's looking good for the top drivers. A little bit of move further down for Lysa, gets up into that 17th place. But pretty static as you work away through the end of the Grand Prix loop.
Yeah, indeed. Still plenty more corners left to go before we head back out and into the Nordschleife, into the Green Hell, but it's an excellent conversion there from Ribeiro, our pole sitter. Dropping back down the order just a touch. Sven Mackenberg, well, he's not going to be a fan of that, certainly not an only fan of that, as he drops back behind Del Rio at the moment. He's worked his way through. That must have been quite a good move coming out of the Schumacher S as they work their way up towards NGK and looking for any sort of move. Is it the chicane, or what do we call the fast one? Vito.
Don't know what the yeah, maybe, but I didn't think they had different names to us. Fast one and slow one, but anyway, we're not seeing it very many times. It's a launch ride from this, the laps are actually long, so it's fine. Out onto the north side for the first time. We've got a noticeable lead, I think, over that Grand Prix out there. 0.8 of a second to even carry on to the north side. Could be quite dangerous for everybody else here if they let him get away. And who was that over the grass? Was that Enzo Filippo? He really hasn't been having a good start.
Bringing the dust up already. Just a handful of kilometres into this 2.4 hours. And yes, it's more. I think it's actually maybe just a line. All of them trying to cut over the curbs here. They are quite big, but there's a few of them, especially through that part, through Hatzenbach and down there. You can definitely mount them if you're careful enough and get the line right. But for Rivera at the front, here is the view from him. He's got a clear track ahead and he's pulled another 10th through that section. This is looking very promising for him, considering he had that speed in qualifying as well. It's looking rather nice.
Well, yes, if you want to go fast around this circuit, the most important thing is knowing what curbs you can and which curbs you cannot attack. And that's the same in Hatzenbach. It's the same as around the back end of the circuit, the likes of Ice Curb and obviously down at YouTube Corner. Knowing which corners you can abuse the curbs and track limits on, the car will still remain fairly settled. Very important as well. They work their way through Schwedenkreuz and now down the hill as they head into Arenberg and then towards Vauxhall. A couple of looks, and as Christian advised, trying to get past Rokus to be a little bit further down the order, about 21st position. This is Schwartz, Tom Schwartz, keeping Freedom Brown just behind as we head up towards Ardnau Force. It's a 1 second lead from Rivero. You're absolutely right, Ewan. He is checking out.
Yeah, I think it's a real problem for the rest, to be honest with you. You can't afford to let the slipstream get away so quickly, I don't think, around this circuit, because it is relatively important, even though it's the twists and the turns that really gives this circuit its status, if you like, in the world of motorsport. There's a lot of sections where you're flat out on the throttle. It's either a straight line or it doesn't really matter which way the road is bending. It just it matters that you're in the slipstream, and at the moment nobody is in the slipstream of the overall race leader. It doesn't mean it's done by any means, but I think it's very significant that he's got a second and a half already.
Yeah, it's looking impressive at this moment in time, but plenty of racing still to go, as we're seeing the drivers obviously work their way now deep through the Nordschleife part of it. And this is where the challenges really come. You've got these awkward apexes, these sort of half flat out corners. You have to really keep the consistency around here, but it's so difficult to do so because it's so long before you come up to a corner again. It's quite difficult actually to get a bit of a rhythm. And what we're seeing here is Weitzel getting on the back of Rokus to be, and actually to be making some mistakes there and being under pressure.
Yeah, coming out of Exmall and up towards the Lauder curve and towards Bergwerk, where the real climb properly begins up towards Bravery Corner. Of course, the Muck curve are out a little bit wide is Weitzel. Out way wide. That's actually my line going through there. Goodness me, not even close to the apex there for the German. Doesn't look as though the Porsche are doing particularly strong. The highest placed one is Coughlin, and he might be losing out an extra position here, because here comes Vigneron to looking to what would be the inside of Bravery Corner. Surely he's not going to go for it.
Just looking to recover some of those places he's lost from that start, Guillaume Vigneron, and not going to do it at the Muck curve. Probably the best idea, really. Such a fast left-hander that can go so wrong very, very easily indeed. So he's taken on the better choice, I would argue there. Now down in towards the right-hander before the carousel, the most famous corner on this circuit, I would argue, but by no means the most exciting. Just get yourself down low into the banking and then just sort of don't stay there and don't fall out before the end. Unfortunately, it looks like Schwartz may have fallen out. He certainly has. He's certainly gone in with the front end of that BMW as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty hard hit. He's got back going, but he's lost about 15 places almost out of that one. As the Silver goes past him, he's obviously just spun it up, or maybe caught the curb at the wrong angle coming out of the carousel. So work our way back up to Petch, who's wiggling the rear end of that number 6 Ferrari. And this, to be honest, is my favourite section of corners in the whole world. As he gets past there, and Mitchmon, who's slowed down, and also Lysa gets through too.
No idea what happened there with Mitchmon. That was very slow. Lifted off very early going into the likes of her act. Of course, the highest point of the circuit now runs out wide as well. It's looking like a fairly messy final part of the lap coming in from Mitch Bond. I mean, I've always said, yeah, with the circuit, I say it every time we go racing with the Nordschleife, for the first 2 sectors are absolutely fine, like you can get into the rhythm. This third sector, obviously big air quotes is how you classify a third sector around here, it is the trickiest because it's the one, to be fair, but for the most part it's the one that most people crash going through because then they restart their lap and they go for the first sector again. The one they've driven the least, theoretically, is this third and final sector. But Ribeiro, it doesn't matter whether he's on the Grand Prix loop or the Nordschleife, 3 seconds of a lead at the moment for the Audi driver. I'm speechless. If that's pure pace, not running the same fuel numbers as the likes of Blankenberg and Stoffel behind, that's very impressive.
Well, first of all, I think we've got to factor in the fact that Stoffel has been behind Colin Blankenberg for most of this, well, all of this lap, and so have we really seen his true potential yet? I'm not entirely sure that we have, but nevertheless, to have 3 seconds over Blankenberg even for Ribeiro is very impressive, I would argue. They were both up there in qualifying, and I wasn't expecting this kind of gap so quickly at all, really. I mean, the gap was less than a second between first and second of the best times in qualifying, for example. So that is a real surprise to me as Stoffel gets pretty close to Blankenberg. Looks like he's going to make a move for second place. Maybe we'll see what the Dutchman can do now that he's out front.
Yeah, so he was about 0.4 of a second back coming onto the straight, and that was a move. So just keep that in mind for later battles in the race, about half a second or so, and it should be a fairly comfortable move in the hold zip through the Tiergarten as we come to end the first lap of the race. Ribeiro's leading, but 3 seconds back now is Stoffel trying to chase him down, and the battles are continuing further down as they all keep together with that slipstream pulling them back.
Guillaume Vigneron here with Ferdinand Coughlin behind, of course. Brown just ahead, trying to find a way past is Guillaume Vigneron. He's already cleared Coughlin on this lap. Will now try to clear going down into that first corner. Gets to the outside of turn 1, it'll be the inside for turn 2 if he can commit rather all the way down into it. Doesn't seem as though that Mercedes is going to be able to do so. So has to settle behind Brown. One of those ones, and we'll see some side-by-side behind all that. Almost some 3 wide going down into T1 with the likes of Weitzel and Bock.
Oh dear. Oh, and that was contact as well. I think it's broken. Yeah, it is broken to be. No, dear, don't do that. He's rejoined straight into the path, I'm afraid, of Zach Silver, who was on the scene very quickly in the Audi, and I'm afraid that's not going to go down as Rokas to be's best moment in a sim racing race. I'm afraid that was not smart driving at all there. Didn't really see where the contact came from, but that's another thing with that first chicane cam, that it sort of promotes awkward contact like that.
Yeah, the apexes are just awkwardly tight and at a weird angle, and the second apex is basically just a wall as well, so awkward corner. And to be honest, I mean, De Bie shouldn't have moved. That was a terrible rejoin, let's be honest. But it's also a tricky situation to be because cars are flying down. It's kind of blind. But either way, he should have stayed where he is and not make further contact and compound the issue for others, which is a bit of a shame as he's a top driver. He can definitely be up inside the top 5 in this race, but struggling now down in 22nd.
Look, I would never rejoin badly like that. Never. I would never do that. No, absolutely not. Was it the pair of you that were on that broadcast? It was definitely you.
It was definitely me because I bring it up almost every day. I don't know who I was with. No.
Anytime I bring up, that's a terrible rejoin, very swiftly. It's like, do you remember that Formula 4 race? You did it in Interlagos? I'm like, yes. Yeah, all right, fair enough. I rejoined the racing line at full speed and detonated a few cars, which was not my proudest moment, but it's fine.
It's becoming a long time ago, but the frequency with which I'm mentioning it is not decreasing, actually. So it just looked more spectacular because there was bodywork flying everywhere and all sorts. It was quite a sight.
It's true. Was it Cam? Were you on that one?
If it was Interlagos, it wasn't me.
Ah, fair enough. I can't remember who it would have been. It was Friday Night France on RaceRoom. Either way, we'll refocus on the race. We'll keep it moderately. I said we were going to keep it on topic. We've been this 10 minutes and we've dragged it right off. Schwartz has had a bit of a problem. Despite running quite well at the early points of this race, it becomes our first retirement from proceeding. Big shame from him. Obviously had that moment coming out of the carousel.
It is a big shame, yeah. It's not going to be our last retirement, I would have thought. It's to be an attritional race for sure, but shame to see that we've already got our first, just 12 minutes in, less than 12 minutes into into this race, in the battle for second, we've sort of seen them actually close in a little bit as a collective on Ribeiro, but I mean the gap's barely budged. It's only 3.5 seconds at the moment, with Stoffmill now leading them. I thought, Cam, when he got through here, Stoffmill, he might be able to lead the charge and maybe even get away from Blankenberg, because what that first lap said to me was he was a driver stuck behind someone he was faster than, but clearly that's not the case, because now it looks like Blankenberg's stuck behind someone he can't get past, and so they're sort of what I'm deducing from all this is that they might well have just the same pace, and they're both losing a lot of time for Ribeiro, who still has a big lead for this stage in the race.
Yeah, I assume it is just a point of they're identically paced and they can't pull away from each other. I think you're right on that one. Stoffmill has just lost a little bit of time as well from Ribeiro. So Ribeiro has the speed in all three of these. So I think they just need to focus on themselves for this moment in time. And that's a huge slide wide there. Four tyres all sliding. And that is not what you want to be doing. So he is pushing actually to keep on the back of Stoffmill. So maybe he is over pushing at this point, and Filippo actually will sort of get him in a second when he starts burning out his tyres.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, it's sometimes about timing and stuff in this race. We don't know what strategies they're running, whether they're doing this race as a one-stop, or if they're pushing a little bit hard and still doing it as a two. It is possible to make this a one-stop race. We've seen it in years prior. This is why I said before about the Mackenbergs. They both tend to try something like that. I remember them trying it in the Bentley. I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, when they gave it a go in the Bentley. As here comes the move from Enzo Filippo up the hill. They're trying to get past Blankenberg to the outside of Mutkirva as they work their way, going through the left-hander and now into Mutkirva. A little bit leaning between the pair of them. Oh my goodness, that is so close. Straight around the outside from Enzo Filippo as he's going to try and sneak that one on Blankenberg. An enormous gap has grown between second and third, but that is an outstanding move from the Frenchman.
It wasn't without its contact, but you've almost got to lean on each other to make as much room for one another as you possibly can through that high commitment left-hander. And in the end, Enzo Filippo makes his way through. Somewhat surprised he was able to do that, because it is not a straight, but it is an overtaking opportunity. There's just a lot of risk attached with it, and with over 2 hours remaining, I thought we would reserve those kind of moves for later on, but Filippo decided it was necessary, and maybe it was, because he is a driver very much without track position at the moment, and he's looking to do anything really to try and improve his position in the race.
Now we need to see what pace he has. Got a little bit of clean air. He's going to have to try and get Stoffmill as well. That won't be an easy overtake either. So is he really... Oh, wow, huge moment there in the background as well for Blankenberg. Almost sending it off, but managing just about to keep it. Going forward in a straight line. But for Filippo, he just needs to now focus ahead, try and get Stoffmill, and then he might have a chance to get Ribeiro over the course of the race. But Ribeiro's pace is looking so good. Over 5 seconds in a couple of laps. That is working out very, very nicely indeed.
Just kind of seems to be fairly unstoppable at the moment, does the Portuguese driver, of course. This could be fortuitous for this group to see Stoffmill running in second position, but now with no pressure from behind directly. Obviously, yes, it's 1.2 seconds, but not having a car directly there, not having to worry too much about defending or keeping things completely on the straight and narrow, can actually just focus on driving themselves. There's been an enormous crash here for Istvan Tits, but unfortunately make just quite a significant mistake into the barrier to the rear end of the car. Yeah, that's pretty broken on the front as well.
It certainly looks like it, I'm afraid. So not Istvan Tits' first incident of the day, and so now nearly a minute off of the lead already, which is a shame. Looks like Frida Bro may have had trouble as well. That is a pretty damaged Audi, actually, there through the right and the left at Traubentrans, right at the end of the lap, just before the mini carousel, and he's dropped a couple of positions. It's not necessarily about the positions he's dropped now, it's those that he'll drop later with a car looking like that.
Yeah, I was thinking that as well. That rear wing is completely bent, and not going to be doing him a good job as he now works his way onto Duttinger Hearn, possibly going to be losing a place. And also losing a place, is this going to be Blankenberg getting back? No, just doing a bit of bump drafting actually, so he's trying to use him, use a bit of aerodynamic performance there to push him up towards the back of Stoffmill to help himself later on, because he knows Filippo's pretty quicker than Stoffmill, but then he wants to try and get through the Ferrari driver as well, and this might be the lap Filippo to get back past.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see if there is going to be a move. I will say Filippo's pace over the last little bit has actually been quite quick. He's caught up to the rear end of Stoffmill very quickly indeed. And also, if you compare the larger and slightly more important gap, the gap between third and first in that case, Filippo up to the race leader, that has also come down a fair margin. So there is, again, the potential that maybe Enzo Filippo is going to be the driver to catch Ribeiro. It all came down to that race start, really, though. Just kind of didn't really get going. Maybe it caught up a little bit in, with the drama at T1, but it already really dropped behind Blankenberg and the lights before it even got to the brakes.
I wonder whether he'll come back to rue that a little bit later on, if he's running out of laps towards the end to make something happen, whatever it is. He might look back to that as the moment where it all went wrong right at the very start, but we'll see about that later. Very much depends where he ends up at the end, because if he still wins anyway, he won't really care. But let's wait and see on that front. The only reason I'd be sort of sceptical that gap coming down on that last lap is a real sign of a positive for Filippo is the fact that when he's trying to catch Ribeiro, for the most part, he's not going to have a tremendous slipstream from somebody right in front of him on the longest straight of the circuit. That really helps you down there, as we've seen before. It's where most of the racing happens on this circuit, right towards the very end of the lap, because of all the slipstream that I mentioned there. So that's what he's not going to have. He's going to need to do this on pure speed, if indeed he even gets to second place. And that's the first thing he's got to achieve here. He's got to get past Stoffmill. If Enzo Filippo wants to win this race, got to get past Stoffmill and then start to close in on that margin, because he's not going to manage it. He's not going to go from third to first in one go in this situation, that's for sure. He needs to make his steps up. So we're going to see how desperate Enzo Filippo is. We got an insight into it last lap. We'll see just how desperate Filippo is to make it through into second this time round, especially the mud curve I'm looking forward to.
Well, looking at his move on Stoffmill a lap ago, I think he's fairly keen to get up in front of these guys, because he knows he probably does have the pace, and if he stays this close by the end of the lap, he should have the slipstream. But the issue for him, he's got the pressure in behind from Blankenberg, so he's got to be looking ahead and behind. It's kind of the worst position to be, actually, when you're in a trio like this. And let's see, as we come up through the very fast section down towards Arenberg, you can make some moves here if you want a bit of a send, but I don't think anyone is going to be doing that just at this point. It's high risk if he wants to go for it. He is looking slightly to the inside there, just getting in towards the mirrors, but no move this time around.
No, not quite. I mean, I will say the braking zone for Arenberg is just, it's so short. It's such a tricky braking zone to kind of navigate. I distinctly remember when Ireland, in fact, the only time that I've actually genuinely properly raced the circuit was here on RaceRoom. And I was in a Mercedes defending from Florian Haase. And I remember whoa, there's a bit of a contact there. You've got to be careful at little bits of contact, but for the most part, you're absolutely fine over the lap. It's so hard to overtake to this middle point of the circuit. You've only really got to worry about the likes of Mid-stint and Dotting Her. Outside of that, the braking zones are far too short. That said, if you're maybe a little bit too careful, like Enzo Filippo right there, you might get a little bit of contact on the rear end. Quick hands from both Filippo and from Blankenberg to manage to catch those cars, because that could have ended in tears.
Yeah, very quick hands, especially with the Audi. So, Filippo was the first one I noticed there, going over the brow of the hill. Real big snap of oversteer. It does make me worry a little bit for him, to be honest. We're only 20 minutes into the race, and I'm thinking, well, if that's how his car's behaving after just 20 minutes, how is he going to keep it on the road for another 2 hours? Because it's not a short race, and not one that you want to have a crash in. So I'm just fearful a little bit further down the line, but a great save for now, and clearly he's got the speed, because he lost some time in that slide. He's right back there again now, right behind Stoffmill, getting towards Bergwerk and that all-important run up to the mud curve.
Does he want to do it twice in the race around the outside? It's certainly setting up to be that way. He's getting ever so slightly close. He did drop back slightly towards the beginning part of this lap, and now he's closing in once more as there's slightly different lines there. Stoffmill getting a bit wider on the entry, trying to get a straighter exit. Is it going to be enough, though, as you come through this completely flat-out section? And there might be quite a few kinks, but it is all the way uphill as well, really dragging for the car ahead.
Certainly is, as you can see that gap growing, closing and closing and closing. And here we go then to the right-hand side once more, almost trying to be covered off by Mike Stoffmill, but cannot close that door down. And even before we get to Curva, the Audi R8 is back ahead. So Enzo Filippo back into the position that he started the race into second, with 7.2 seconds to close down. We've only completed 22 minutes of this race. There is so much time for them to close that margin down, but it is a very, very large gap. We are going to need to see some of the very best laps we've ever seen from Enzo Filippo if he's able to close down on Ribeiro right now.
Yeah, I don't think he should be overly worried with 6 seconds and 2 hours remaining. I can't quite translate that into how many laps to go, but you know, there's plenty of laps. We're not even at a second a lap yet, and even with laps this long, second a lap isn't overly daunting, I wouldn't argue, because Ribeiro's been able to put more than that into him, so surely it could work the other way around as well if Enzo Filippo paces this right. But what was really noticeable to me there was just how early Stoffmill actually defended. In the end, it didn't matter, but it was very telling to me that even though it would mean the outside line for the next couple of gentle right-handers, he desperately wanted the inside for the muck curve itself. He clearly believes that you don't really stand a chance if you're on the outside there.
As there's further moves, Lupus goes down behind Mitchmont up into 13th place. It got about 3 or so seconds ahead of them as they worked their way up through her act. Now there's a little bit of a train actually forming behind, about 5 or 6 cars here, very close down, sort of in and around 15th position, which is currently held by Brown here, with still those bent rear wing. Very easy to see which car is his, and he's seemingly going okay actually, so I don't think it's too bad. It might just be a bit draggy in a straight line, but it looks like he's got the downforce at least. Yeah,
I mean, I did see the Ferrari as well behind all of this in Beaumagne's trying to make a couple of looks. Did have a bit of one, a bit of a bite on Laser at the moment behind. Was unable to make that move stick, and same with red and yellow distinctive colours on the Ferrari. Definitely AF Corsa livery. Just trying to find a way past. But again, it's the whole thing of if you try and rush a move at this point in the track, I can tell you it will end in a crash. And yes, that is from experience. What do you mean?
I've seen you drive.
What do you mean?
The only one to crash at Spa 24 last year.
That is
I wasn't going to bring that up again. We have done now, so no. Anyway, some McLarens in this part of the order, that's for sure. But Stern Mackenberg trying to get through on Renato Del Rio for 7th place, but a lot closer. This battle for second. Stoffmill is not over with this battle just yet, and he's coming back past the Audi now into the Tiergarten.
Oh, this is going to be a tough one for Filippo, because he's going to have to spend another lap behind at the Nordschleife. If he can't get back through, looks like he's going to have to back out of that one. So Stoffmill up into second place, where he was just half a lap ago, and now the Audi of Filippo is going to have to try and get back past. This battling has meant they've lost a little bit of extra time to Ribeiro. Is this going to be a send down towards turn number 1? He's getting closer. It is a fairly long straight here, actually. Moves to the right-hand side off the track. Later braking is going to have to be. Beelines it for the apex, and he makes his way back through up into second.
Yeah, I mean, look, I always say, why bother trying to go for the race victory when you can squabble over second and let race victory run away from you when it's already quite a large margin between the pair of you. But hey, do you know what? That's fine. The two of them listening very much to that. Just fighting too hard over second spot at the moment. If I'm Mike Stockmill, I'm thinking, if I'm bump drafting that car ahead, maybe we can start to close that gap. If we work together, even not even bump drafting, if you just don't fight, as Lupus has maybe gone for a bit of a Lupus himself as he drops down the order to 20th now. Goes the Austrian, as here comes the fight for 14th.
Look at the grenade he's set off in this group, and he's just walked straight away from it. Side-to-side contact through turn 1 and 2 there between Lisa and Brown, and a good run around the outside from the Audi should get the pretty wrecked car, in all honesty, up into 14th position. They'll sort out the battle for 16th place, just behind as well, between Balmano and Vaitu just in behind. A bit wide though from Balmano there, and straight back down the inside goes Vaitu, barely alongside, not quite enough. He flashes the lights as if that makes the blindest bit of difference, and then has another look down in towards the hairpin. He can't make that work and stays in 17th.
What a nice little squabble here. Balmania looks like he was losing a position, and now he's actually sort of on the back of the BMW of Lysa up ahead. So good stuff to see even in the midfield. They're having some great battles, and up towards this next left hand, a bit of defensive line there actually from Lysa as well. So he's looking in his mirrors, he's feeling that pressure from the Ferrari in behind. They work their way out onto this back straight that definitely has a corner in it, and it's going to be a tough one because he's slid a little bit wide as well. Now the Porsche is going to come back and give him some pressure, but now up to Gaspar Misch as well, who's also under pressure. So the battle's continuing on as we've gone past the 2-hour remaining mark.
Yeah, he's dealing with the pressure quite well. Is Gaspar Misch? No mistakes, obviously, holding on to 11th position at the moment, and just dealing again, just settling with the pressure. The Porsche's maybe not looking like the most ideal of car around here. Still running obviously in 10th and 11th. A little bit of contact there from BMW to Ferrari, of course, as Balmania just making a little bit of contact at the rear end of Leon Lysa at the moment. It was a touch. It was nothing more than that. Nothing sinister. Just a tricky difference of speed going into the hearts of that.
Yeah, absolutely. By the way, just I'm taking back all criticism of Gaspar Misch I've ever had, because he's got that livery on, which is absolutely wonderful on the Porsche. He hasn't missed with the livery, has he?
Nice. There we go.
Yes,
got it.
As Cam said that I had to stop. You step up to the plate. I respect that.
I've just started. So there you go. Yeah, but what a livery he's got on. By the way, the driving behind though, Petch, what is that livery? I don't know what that is, but that's not good. Anyway, Gaspar Misch is, and hopefully he can hang on to 11th place as a result. And he just about does on the way in towards Arenberg.
So on livery watch already. To be honest, I agree. It's with the clash of colours, isn't it? With that red and blue. I do like the Porsche ones that we have with the pink headlights. I quite like that. As we're seeing here, Balmania is Weissman behind in that Porsche, but it is Balmania in the Ferrari, still trying to get past Lysa, down through the foxhole and back up the hill towards Adenauer 4. Such a fast section of corners, just a kink there over the curb in towards the braking zone. You really have to send it in these GT3 cars, and they're looking like they're staying single file for now, but look at the difference of line you can get to try and wiggle your way past.
You got on delivery watch, and I wasn't even the one to bring it up. Goodness me, what a time to be alive. You're absolutely right, though. This Porsche looks pretty good. I love pink headlights, but that's fine. Those headlights just being on, not flashing, just staring at the rear end of Balmania's car, and just hanging on. We're half an hour into the Nürburgring 2.4H here on RaceRoom, and of course we're not quite there for the first pit stops. We're about halfway towards the pit stops. Depending on how you're splitting the race. If you're doing it directly in 2 stops, splitting it into thirds directly, we're not that far away realistically from the pit stops. We go through Gaspar Misch's favourite corner. Misch hit Misch.
You slightly missed the chance to get late. But anyway,
That's a good one.
It's good though. So there you go. Anyway, we promised to stay on topic. It's not happening. I told you we shouldn't make promises we can't keep, because it would just end in disaster. But anyway, can't really remember what you were talking about beforehand, to be honest with you. So I'll just carry on anyway. Half an hour in, and yeah, if you're thinking about a 2-stop race, any time from now is okay. If you're maybe stuck in a bit of traffic somewhere, if you are struggling to get through on the drivers in front of you, I'm thinking especially about that group down outside the top 10. It's such a huge group that you could never get on top of, really. So one of those guys might well come in early, but as we were discussing earlier, maybe it's going to be a 1-stop that is the winning strategy today.
I'm just starting to think, is Ribeiro's speed at the front because he's on less fuel going for a 2-stop? We'll have to find out a bit later on in the race. But we've come back to this battle for third as Filipao has gone up the road. So Stoffmill managed to get past on adjusting her last lap. This time around, he's not close enough to get any sort of slipstream, and he is under pressure from Blankenberg in behind. So the tail of this race is certainly changing. But the issue for Filipao is we're almost at 10 seconds for the lead of Ribeiro. When he first got into second place, it was about 5 seconds, but with all the battling, and Ribeiro's speed is now almost double that. So interesting times ahead as we try and work out who is really in control of this race and the strategy that's going to come with that.
I mean, look, the fuel tanks in these cars are pretty big, but the problem is obviously to go, GT3 cars, typically speaking, like to do about an hour's worth of driving, maybe sometimes slightly longer, depending on how good you are with the right foot. The problem is around here, as we've discussed before, is you're on throttle for so long around this circuit. You know, sure, they're not exactly straight, you're going through a lot of kinks and stuff, but it's not like you're on a typical circuit where fuel saving is relatively easy comparatively. Even somewhere like Spa, where you can actually save a relatively decent amount of fuel, especially coming down the hill. As there was someone off the road. Was that right? No, it wasn't.
Lipo, definitely off the road there. We just saw him rejoining. It's a very dangerous place to go off because you don't have much grass before you even get in the wall down there at Schrabenschwanz, and so that's a very good save for him to have kept that out of the wall. What it might mean, in a weird way, is that Stoffmüller might well not get up to second place, but he certainly will hang on to third, I would have thought here. He'll get a bit of that slipstream from the Audi. That might just keep Blankenberg away, although saying that, he's a lot closer than I've realised, actually, Colin Blankenberg, and he might well blow on past anyway. He's got the double slipstream. It looks like he is going to get past indeed, although what happens here when he pulls out of the slipstream? No, he doesn't even do it. He bump drafts instead. He's got eyes on that race lead, clearly.
Yeah, this is looking good for Blankenberg to get back towards Philippau, and they are going to be almost 3 wide coming down towards the Tiergarten. Philippau is under big pressure here. Stoffmüller to the right-hand side. Oh, he has to lift off and brake, though. So Philippau holds on to that second place. That somehow has meant that they've come out in the same order they went in, but I was expecting it almost to be a flip-flop, and in the end, it's Philippau just about holding on. Look for the send, though, maybe for Blankenberg in turn 1.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see if there is going to be that kind of move. But again, if these drivers have any aspirations of taking victory, they need to work together because that gap's far too large. Back down towards Gaspar Misch is going to drop down the order to 12th position because, and I will agree with you, lads, awful livery on the Ferrari, going to work its way past. Does that mean that you didn't like when they did blue on the Ferrari? Was that Miami?
Oh yeah.
No one.
Instagram, maybe. The comments were terrible.
Well, that's not unusual. But yeah, I didn't like it, to be honest. But any livery in comparison to that, the yellow on the Porsche, doesn't stand a chance. I don't really know why you like this one, to be honest. But anyway, Christian likes using it to reduce to get himself up to 15th.
It's more so the pink headlights that I like, actually. Didn't know you could change them, but apparently you can. Just sticks out a little bit more when you have the swarm of cars coming down a straight. And definitely work out who is who, and a little bit nicer, which is quite an interesting point. Also, something have these guys just slightly closed down potentially onto Ribeiro on that previous lap. So I don't think it's all over just yet. No, they were actually a bit slower. Interesting. So pace is flip-flopping just a little bit, but Ribeiro is staying strong. In fact, Ribeiro is easily, as you would expect, the fastest person on the track. I mean, it's not even close with the last lap time being about 2 seconds faster.
I believe, by the way, with the headlights and stuff, that's not changed on the car. Like, you can't change it yourself. That is how it is on that car, which is that car in real life. That's how that car looks. It's driven. Guess who that's driven by? Any ideas? Sim racer.
Oh, you told me this before.
Yeah.
Heinrich?
No, it's Tim
Not
Heinemann.
Heinemann.
Tim Heinemann.
Yeah.
Yeah, drives that car pink headlights. Yeah, of course. Tim Heinemann, mate. Look, I've raced with Tim Heinemann an awful lot, even 10 years ago, and obviously doing in DTM and stuff, that's his livery, and it does look quite good. It's a bit weird though. It's very much a sim racing livery though. I've said that before. Sometimes there's a difference between a livery on like a real world car and then a sim racing livery, and it is really striking to see that in real life. I've always brought up Nico Barkley's Bentley, who was in British GT back in 22, that looked a little bit like definitely a sim racing livery on a real car, which is interesting to see, but there's a slight difference, as we'll see the battle once more for second position still.
I do get what you mean. It certainly does look like a sim racer's livery. There's a lot of crossover these days, though. I mean, look at third and fourth at the moment, both of these two liveries very famous in the real world of motorsports, albeit in very different parts of the world. They are both nevertheless used in the real world. At the moment, though, still trailing Enzo Filippo, who hasn't really made too many inroads to Ribeiro. As you mentioned a couple of months ago, Cam, Ribeiro easily the fastest driver on the circuit last time round. by 2.1 seconds indeed. Colin Blankenberg was second quickest, and that is not a small amount of time to be losing. They've got to reverse these losses pretty shortly.
Yeah, and also on the first sector of this lap, it was another half a second quicker than Filipao. As we're side by side, that is a tough section of the track. And to be honest, one of them is going to have to back out of this. We've got Weitzel. Huge contact. And he sent off into the wall on the right-hand side. Mitchmont goes down. And was Weitzel involved in that? I think he was just enough at a tough point of the track as the 16 managed to carry on.
Yeah, I can kind of suggest that potentially Mitchmont's going to have a fair amount of damage. Did swipe the barrier really hard there going through Schwedenkreuz. It's great save to at least keep it pointing the right way and to not overcorrect and such, but very, very dicey indeed going into Schwedenkreuz. Weitzel now ahead of Leiserand, of course, Ballemagna. To be fair, I'm amazed that Mitchmont's actually not dropped back too much from the grouping, but if he's got any damage, well, he's going to find it over this lap and he's going to probably slow down and drop off the rear end of this grouping. Is he already going to potentially let Philip Bock past?
Let's go and have a look. It's pretty close in towards the left-hander. No, not quite into these couple of turns. There's side by side just up the road, by the way. Side by side as Balmana tries to hold on ahead of Leiser and just about does for 15th position, but it's not getting very close down in this part of the order. Whether Mitchmont is, whether it's psychological rattling that is causing him to lose his time, or whether his car is literally damaged and something more mechanical has been rattled in that bit of an altercation.
I would assume there's some decent damage. I mean, that's got to be 260 k's an hour, and he's just been sent into the barrier. There's got to be some damage. Fortunately, it looks like the rear end's okay and whatnot, but the right-hand side of the car, I think, must have something. Also, when you have something like that, there's all this adrenaline going. All of a sudden, you have to calm back down and get into a rhythm again, and then you've got Bock all over the back of you. It's not an easy situation just to get back in a full racing speed.
Yeah, I mean, look, we always talk about the red mist that happens. You have an instant like that, and suddenly it all takes over, and you're not really focused entirely on what you're doing. Your heart's racing, and you're not really keeping your eye on the road, eye on the prize, and calming yourself down. It takes, to be fair, a fair amount of experience to sit there and go, no, actually, let's just calm things down, breathe, take it one apex at a time, and work your way back around the circuit bit by bit and get back into the rhythm. Gaspar Misch going through Mutkerva, still able to keep that pesky Ferrari at bay.
There's got to be a Gaspar Misch red mist joke in there somewhere, but I've not quite thought of it just yet. Oh dear, it broke a bit too late into the right-hander. That could have opened the opportunity for Zdeněk Pech to get through, but didn't quite. And you're certainly not going to open an opportunity yourself into the carousel. You could force an error, but Misch does not miss the carousel. He stays very much down low on the banking, and he comes out the other side in 11th place. I think it is noticeable, Cam, the gap just up in front of him. It very much feels like the top 10 almost are in a different race to the rest of the field.
Yeah, I mean, there are some bigger gaps up ahead, though, to be fair, but that's certainly a break in the chain, because behind them, the biggest gap is about 5 seconds. Most of them is under 2 seconds as well, so they are staying fairly close together. There's a track map on the top right. You can see we're getting these little splinters, these little packets of cars over the course of the lap. Everyone is still pretty much in the third sector as we speak, due to the just pure length of this track. Already 40 minutes into the race so far, working out very nicely indeed. But the battles are continuing on, and that we've just seen his Bock on the back of Mitchmont as he still tries to calm himself down. And up ahead, Blankenberg ahead of Stoffmill now, and it looks like he is able to hold him at bay.
Yeah, like I say at the moment, but the likelihood is that things can change at this point in the race circuit onwards, of course, particularly down into Tiergarten, but also down into turn 1 as well. 40 minutes down in the race. Realistically, if they're going to split the race into 3 equal stints, so doing a 2-stop race, then the next lap will be the last lap of their first stint, if they're going to play it that way. A couple of ways you can play it, depends on how you want to do tyres and fuel, and work your way through that mix as well, as things are closing up, like Stoffmill closing in, not going for the move on Colin Blankenberg just yet. I think there might be a little bit of luck coming down into turn 1 though. Let's see if the opportunity is going to be there for the Ferrari and if there's going to be a move.
Yeah, I think he's been the most willing of the top four when they've been in battles to actually do it. I mean, much to your disgust, Lewis, at times, but he has been the most willing to actually make moves. To see if he does into turn one. I don't think he's close enough, but he's not adverse to a dive, and he doesn't decide to on this occasion. But I think this group may well go quicker with Blankenberg in third. I think Softmore's just been losing a little bit of speed in these last few moments, and so it's now time for Blankenberg to get to the front and start pushing on. But I do wonder whether he's been fuel saving a bit before he's been getting through there, because to mention this will be an 18-lap race. If you do a couple of 9-lap stints, you can make it on one stop. We've seen it done before, and that might be what it takes to beat Ribeiro today.
I think it might need to, as we've seen Elisa. So Balmania did get past at some point, but then we've seen Elisa get back through for that 15th place later on the break. So for the Ferrari, and having to get out of that one, that could have been a big crash, but fortunately not so, as we come on to the straights now. And Mitchmont with that potentially damaged Audi, but he's pulled away from Bok and now is trying to attack the Ferrari.
Yeah, let's see if there is going to be a move. That was nearly a very costly mistake for Balmania. Very much of what we saw from the end of the race in the BMW MTCS Racing Cup, as the look to the inside will come in now. Down into the first corner they'll go. Mitchmont will send it, despite that Audi R8 potentially being damaged after contacting Schwebenkreuz. It will be the position switch. Balmania down then into 17th position. Mitchmont back up into 16th. And with only 0.8 of a second back up to the BMWs, we head back down to Van Roon, trying to find his way past Bok. Still plenty of battles in all this. Rokas de Bie had some drama early on in the race. Still holds there in 20th position in that Porsche.
Yeah, I mean, lots of the battling in this race has been down towards the back, to be honest. The leaders haven't been providing us with much, maybe because they've had eyes on the lead and they don't want to lose too much time if they're not battling for the lead. But these guys are not worried about that. They're just battling with one another, and it's fantastic to watch. Around the outside for Van Roon there, around the hairpin at the bottom of the circuit. That was very impressive. Less impressive was that, I'm afraid. Bok goes for a huge spin, and he's somewhat lucky not to have found one of the walls.
Wow, that I mean, it was a big crash, but that could have been even more huge as he comes up through the Schumacher S and will have to calm himself down and get going again in P21, as we see in Balmania now trying to get back through Mitchmont up towards the chicane. See the faster variant, not much of a braking zone, just about enough to make a move, but not enough this time around. So it looks like the Audi will be holding that position. We come back to the front, which is good because I wanted to mention a couple of the lap times that we are seeing. So Ribeiro has not been below an 8:09 all race. He's been in the 8:09. He's been very consistent. Whereas last lap, Philippou did his best lap of the race, and it was a 10 flat. So his best lap of the race is still slower than all of the laps so far from Ribeiro.
Yeah, indeed. It's just, again, it's not even the pace for Ribeiro at the moment, it's the consistency, right? It's the fact that that gap's kind of grown at a fairly consistent rate. It's been holding around that 10-second margin. And it's just the ability to be able to do that lap, those laps again and again and again. That takes a lot of work and a lot of practice to kind of be able to repeat those laps on a relatively consistent basis. Does not mean that things are set in sort of. We've hypothesised about the idea of there maybe being a difference on strategy between that, but the thing is if Ribeiro is on a two-stop strategy, which I do believe he is, I don't see the entire group behind being on one-stop strategy. I think if Ribeiro's on a two-stop strategy, I can kind of see everyone else being on two-stop strategy. I just think the gaps would have grown more, or there would have been more people working their way through the order at rapid speed because they're also on a two-stop versus a one.
Yeah, the top four are going too quick to be on one stoppers, surely. You've got to really be saving a lot of fuel to make that work, and that's not sustainable with the top four running away in the manner that they are. You mentioned the Mackenbergs doing it last time. Not sure whether they both did or not, but they finished 6th and 11th last year, by the way, in the Bentley, which is a slightly odd choice, isn't it, really, for a GT3 event these days. But it's always great to see the Bentley. Yeah, 6th and 11th is where they ended up finishing, but I just think that if it's anyone outside of the top four, then there's almost not really any point, because look at the gaps from Mickiewicz is almost quarter of a minute behind the battle with Stoffmehl involved. Marvin Mackenberg is in 6th place, another 20 seconds back. You know, these guys are a long way off the lead, and so if you're outside the top 4, you really are in a bit of trouble here as far as winning this race goes.
Yeah, and also when you're doing 2-stop, you could go 666, or you could go 882, or you could do like 774. Like, there's a few different ways that you could do it as well. It doesn't just have to be the equal split. So that might be an interesting factor. If he doesn't pit the end of this lap, he might still be going for it and just having a splash for that final stop. So I have to see. But you're right, actually, Ewan. It's just the gap is the important bit. He's going to be ahead anyways. We see the 77 now coming to the outside. This is Sven Mackenberg trying to make the move on Vigneron, side by side in towards the Muck curve. He's going to have that one done, up into 8th place. A little bit easier than some other moves we've seen in that corner of this race, but a sketchy one nevertheless.
So Vigneron might not have subscribed to that move, but we certainly all did. That was an excellent move from Sven Mackenberg to have worked his way through into 8th position. Fantastic attempt there, and against a nice little look, kept the foot in and guided his way through in that very distinctive McLaren livery. Of course, now 1.8 seconds up to the next car, Del Rio. I mean, like this, I think there is going to be a catch. If there's anyone trying the one-stop strategy, it probably will be the Mackenbergs. The reason they were in the Bentleys last year, if I remember correctly, was because the fuel tank was bigger, which made the one-stop easier. Whether that will be the case with the McLaren, I don't believe so.
I personally think it's a real stretch to do it anyway, and you've got to factor in and think about it in this way. If you're going to lose more time than you would have done just going at your normal speed by cutting out that extra pit stop, then you might as well do your normal speed. First of all, it's just easier to do your normal speed. That's what you always practice. That's something you don't have to think about. You don't have to think about lifting off and fuel saving. That can be quite taxing on the brain over the course of 2.4 hours in this race, and it's obviously quicker to drive at your normal speed. So if you're going to lose all the time by saving that fuel, you might as well just take the extra stop and drive in the normal way, I suppose. And also, Cam, I know you've spoken to me about this before. Fuel saving is not actually very enjoyable. It's just a bit annoying, really. And I think you'd have more fun if you just did 2 stops.
Yeah, you're right, because to make it work, you are going to have to save effectively for all 18 laps of the race. So for 2 and basically a half hours, you need to be fuel saving. Whereas if you go flat out, not saving that 1%, then the race will be more enjoyable either way, regardless of your finishing position. And talking of finished positions, is there going to be a change of position at the moment? No, Stoffmehl was getting a bit closer, not enough to get to Blankenberg. And they've dropped off by over 2 seconds now to Philippau. We are at the end of this 6th lap. These guys are not coming in just yet. Not necessarily means they're going for the one stop, but let's see. Anyone in the pit lane? No, so Ribeiro is continuing on as well.
Yeah, indeed. I will back up the fuel saving claims there. There are times where like fuel saving for a stint or so could be like interesting, and there can be like a bit of a balance, and you can actually sometimes go a little bit quicker. To return to our little Spa race, I was better on fuel mileage than the pair of you, so and as far as that's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll see a switch here, as Gaspar Misch might be losing out to the Ferrari, but I do get the feeling that Peck might have been a little bit too close going through Galkopf, and when you do that, when you pull out of the slipstream, you don't have the overspeed to carry the speed past the car, and so once again, as soon as they hit the wall there, unable to complete that move with Gaspar Misch, clearly with a Porsche which is fairly quick in the straight line, able to keep them at bay. Silver's gone for a bit of a spin down in 22nd, and that is quite a spin as well. It's
an odd place to do it at the what's it called these days? Stefan Bella Fest, is it called? Yes, thank you. So I was trying to remember which I was about to call it the Jackie XS. That's not true. It's Stefan Bella. There you go. Sorry about that. Silver getting back underway. Not sure that car's all quite well, I've got to say, as we get the battle again for 17th place. It's been so entertaining down here. Rochester B now finding his way up ahead of his compatriot Van Brun and into the pit lane. Balmania, to be fair, he's been knocked around in those last few laps, and so I'm not surprised he's come into pit lane early.
Yeah, definitely a good choice as we're seeing the battle continue here down in towards turn number 1. We got to be in the Porsche. We got Van Rooyen in the Audi. Almost some contact as they swap line slightly in towards turn 2. And that meant the Audi had to slow down, and De Vries should be okay to hold on in that all-Dutch battle coming through the first couple of sectors. So yeah, Baumania, Lysa in the pit lane. Lupus Tits already made their stop, as you can see by the green number 1 symbol. And of course, Schwartz, the only DNF of the 26 so far.
Yeah, indeed. That was obviously a fair amount earlier on in the race after drama for him going out of the carousel. Here comes the switch for Climb Ridder, trying to get past Lupus's Ferrari, but cannot make the move. As to be fair, Silver's decided that actually, do you know what? I don't want to stay on the race circuit, straight out towards the barrier. I think there might be a fair amount of damage on Silver's car, and certainly won't be going for silver, bronze or gold in this race. We'll just have to return to pit lane and accept the repair time and maybe even the wooden spoon.
Well, yes, I suppose. Although, can we already give that to Schwartz because he's out of the race? But anyway,
That's
he's in
true.
the pit lane regardless, as are a few of the drivers. Didn't notice that Istvan Tits had come in earlier on, but he has done again now. So it's a free stop race for him, at least today, I'm afraid to say. That's really going to hamper him over the course of the event. But I am somewhat surprised, especially some of those who are stuck behind others, have not gone for maybe splitting this race into thirds. If you're going for a two-stop strategy, why not come in after 6 laps and split this one up a little bit differently? There is the danger, of course, that you just get caught up in more traffic, and that's especially poignant for those who are up inside the top 10. But for those further back, I don't understand why more of them didn't come in to escape this kind of battle. You know, people like Zdeněk Pech here. He's been stuck behind Gaspar Misch for ages. He clearly wants to get through because he keeps pulling alongside on the back straight, but he can never get all the way through because the Ferrari, I don't think, is quite quick enough in a straight line. And so he's just got to accept 12th place. But if he pitted, he might have the chance of getting away from Gaspar Misch.
He set about the top speed. Let's see this. We saw, oh no, huge contact with the curb. He keeps it in a straight line. I thought we were going to see an airborne crash there, as we've already seen a crash coming up there towards the trading cross and in towards Arenberg. He's not going to be able to get past, but some big risk being taken here by Pech. And as you're saying, this just loses them time. But I think it's also because it's natural to start the race with a full tank. So I think going 8.82 is still going to be on the cards for some people, you know, wanting to try and just have the splash later on rather than starting with less fuel, and therefore you effectively have to drop more in the tank later.
Yeah, if you're going to do an 8.82, what you'll do is on that final 2-lap stint, you won't take tyres. You'll just take a little bit of fuel, at which point doing an 8.55 makes more sense because you're keeping a lower fuel load on the car for a longer period of time, whereas going 8 then filling the tank up again, going 8 and then just doing 2, you actually burn out the tyres more because you're putting more weight onto that car. So if you are going to do it, split the 10 laps evenly, but obviously, like you say, taking more fuel at the race start is why they're not going to do a 4 or 5 lap stint for the most part on the opening stint, because it makes very little sense, as Rokas De Vries' line there also makes very little sense. We come up and over the crest, drop down towards Callan-Hart. Could there be a move from Van Rooyen here, committing onto the brakes down into the awkward corner? Does not make that move stick. Rokas De Vries hangs on.
On the curb, and he's not going to hang on for any longer because he got that all wrong. Rokas De Vries just before miss hit. He just got very wide up on the curb and was always going to lose that place to his compatriot Frank Van Rooyen. So afraid to say that's another change of position back here, but fantastic battling from 15th place on backwards. There's only really 4 of them in this group now, and Box quite a long, or 5 I should say, and Box quite a long way behind them all. But don't forget about those drivers who have already pitted and are grouped fairly close together. That's where these guys will be fighting a little bit later on. And so once those 2 groups converge again, I'd imagine we'll be seeing a very similar second half to this race. At least I hope we're going to be seeing a similar second half to this race to what we've had between those guys in the first half.
Yeah, it's been great battles, and this might be another one. Misch is looking in his rearview mirrors. He's in the middle of the road, actually. That's quite a good place because it's almost difficult to go 3 wide as such, so left and right are pretty much cut off, and Pech is not going to be able to get past in towards the curve. He's carrying ever so slightly more speed. And as you work our way up to the next braking zone, might be able to try and find his way through, but no, not this time around. And what I'm actually seeing from some drivers is the lap times are starting to increase. As the fuel load has gone off, obviously the car is now a lot lighter, and we are seeing some top times come in. And Filipao now into the 8-minute and 9-second range, where, of course, Ribeiro has been from the start of the race. The gap is still around 11 seconds at the front.
Indeed. I wonder how close you can get to those kind of times, Cam.
Oh, I don't know if I would even qualify for the top split, or even like the 5th split, to be fair.
Are you not a Nordschleife kind of guy? I know you and Dan.
I am, to be fair. I'll back myself. I'll back myself.
Dear.
Top 10 in qualifying.
Again, I've raced it once, and I will probably race her again. But it wasn't a good event, so at least there was that. I had some quality teammates to pull me through, and we still didn't win because of my mediocrity around here. So sorry about that. And yes, to answer your question, I did spin in that race. That's fine. It's a thing for me apparently. It's okay. Of course, as this battle still remains close, it's been very close for the entire opening portion of the first hour of this race. We're 3 minutes away from completing that, 90 minutes away from seeing the checker flag and who's going to win. At the moment, it is Ribeiro in control. Who, seeing stuff in chat, I don't forget in the vibe, is Ribeiro on a controller? If so, that's crazy.
I wouldn't have thought so.
No, I wouldn't have thought so either. But that's a very Lazarus Filiparkos kind of.
Controller on a sim is very interesting because the handling is just not designed for that those minimal inputs. As we are seeing the first pit stop of the day at the front.
By the way, do you not remember Lazarus Filiparkos, Cam? Maybe you don't.
I do. He drove for my team back in the day.
Did he really?
For one race as a replacement. Good old ITC.
Yeah. Sorry, he was in charge and then thought, oh no.
He won an ITC?
Div 2.
Well, I was going to say, if there was someone else winning in Div 1 in ITC. Kevin Siggy.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, well, it wasn't me. I only won like 4 times in 7 years. It's fine. But either way, that's okay. As like I said, a lot of the top contingent work their way onto pit lane side by side back here as we'll see the move. Sven Mackenberg to the outside of Renato Del Rio, and we'll complete that move probably before jumping into pit lane, maybe.
Oh dear. Oh, awkward in the wall as well. And they both stay out. They all stay out. Oh, what's going on here? It's the Mackenberg is going long again, but look at the amount of time that Ribeiro has over them. He is already out of the pit lane ahead of these guys. Ribeiro has lost one single place by making that pit stop, and only 3 others have followed him in so far.
This is very interesting. I've just realised we're coming in after 7 laps. That's sort of in between of what we were talking about. So tactics coming the way of these drivers. Indeed, there's Del Rio trying to continue that battle on with Mackenberg in towards a potential actually overtaking opportunity here down in towards Dunlop. Actually not quite close enough there on the exit, so you shouldn't be getting past at that moment in time. But the interesting and fun fact here is Ribeiro, he had such a big lead, he's still in 2nd place.
It's crazy, isn't it? It's absolutely crazy. Of course, Colin Blankenberg realistically will be coming in at the end of this lap in that Mercedes. No real chance of going much further than that. Always, saving a lap of fuel around here. Cam was the one who posted in a little commentators chat as well, Ewan, that saving a lap around here is like saving 5 laps of fuel on other circuits as Mitchmont into pit lane. I think a few of the cars that have come in the early stages, right now, on this stint, they have probably got to deal with a fair amount of damage repair as well. We've seen a few cars into the barrier, obviously Mitchmont being one of them.
Yeah, we certainly have, and we'll see whether that is going to affect the order when everybody comes out of the pit lane again in a few moments' time. Notice that Gaspar Misch's got nobody behind him anymore. So what's happened there? Has the driver who was right behind him lost a load of time, or has he lost a load of time? I'm working out, to be honest with you. And I'm currently failing. So anyway, we'll get some of that a little bit later on, because Petch is down in 13th place. Well, I'm not sure where he's lost all that time, but meanwhile, Stoffmiller gets through on Mate Miskiewicz. Stoffmiller's also lost a bit of time here. Now half a minute behind Endo Filippo, and Miskiewicz is right with him.
Is this a tyre no tyre situation? Because if they're 2 stopping, as Lewis mentioned, maybe there could be a stint where you don't change tyres. So we could go 774, but then we could also do 747 and then try and do a shorter stint now, get some track position with a shorter stop, taking no tyres, and also have less fuel. Something along those lines potentially could be coming the way. Let's have a look how this one continues. No tyres is an interesting one though, because you go back to a heavy fuel tank and old tyres. So this will be the slowest point in the race for those if anyone didn't take tyres.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, like I say, there's a few different strategic calls you can make around here when it comes to not taking tyres. I think realistically, you don't. Well, I was gonna say maybe you don't want to kind of risk it. But then you say if you're going for like a 4-lap stint or which would realistically be 11 laps in total, 7 and then 4. Or in Blankenberg's case, where he's probably going to go and do 10 laps on the next set of tires. It's not too bad, realistically speaking. There's only 2 more laps than what Blankenberg's already doing, and the pace seems absolutely fine on Blankenberg's car. It's not the highest circuit when it comes to load on the tyres. I know there's quite a lot of high-speed corners around here, but that's mostly separated by enormous bits of on-throttle and very little steering, as we'll see Rokas to be in the Porsche trying to keep Liza at bay, the driver who's made up the second most positions in this race. Christian Weitzel will be the one on number 1 on that list.
And suddenly front runner is suddenly nowhere really to be seen here, despite the fact he's been battling with Rokas to be for quite some time in this group, so that's pretty interesting to note. But something else that's quite interesting to me actually as well, because I believe Enzo Filippo and Colin Blankenberg will be fighting for second and third at the very least in this race. Filippo has got himself into a lot of traffic. Del Rio is ahead of Sven Mackenberg, who's just ahead of Guillaume Vigneron, and then you get Enzo Filippo. That's a real problem in my mind for the Frenchman. He's trying to overtake drivers who first of all are on quite low fuel, and so they are going to be a bit quick and difficult to pass, but also they could be pretty difficult to overtake here, and Blankenberg running on his own may well be a lot quicker than Filippo, trailing a group of people who are effectively one whole pit stop behind him.
And that's the problem where you pit slightly earlier, to be honest, as this might be a little bit of a look for a move. It is certainly Liza putting a lot of pressure on De B. Down towards Arenberg, no overtake this time around, as we have had a second DNF of this race. So Istvan sits in the Ferrari. We saw him a few issues earlier. He just caused another yellow flag about 30 seconds ago, and he joined Schwartz in the pit lane and not in this race anymore.
Yeah, it's all unfortunately gone quite wrong for Istvan Tits and in fact for Tom Schwartz, the pair of those being retirement, as you say, from the race. I think that list might grow over the next hour and 20 minutes, or particularly over the next hour. I think if you're making it into the final, let's say third of the race, the final 40 minutes, I think you're reaching the checker flag almost regardless. But I expect a few people to join that list in the fairly near future, just because of how brutal this circuit is. That said, 2 hours 24 minutes around here. Most drivers should be relatively capable of navigating their way around the circuit for that period of time without any major dramas, certainly at this level. I will say I've noticed the gap for the race heat has grown an awful lot, but I do not believe that is legit. I think that's because the gap is so large between them that it doesn't quite match up particularly well to the time sheet. So you've got to wait until they're back round to complete the lap and then guess what the lap is. So don't worry too much that it's got up to 48 seconds, now back down to 45, and it'll be all up and down all over the place. I think it's just a nature of the timing sheets.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it really matters anyway. The gap to Ribeiro, he's in a world of his own at the moment and will be a long way ahead of the others by the end of this pit stop cycle. Going to be up to a quarter of a minute, I would say, over the others. Or does Colin Blankenberg do something a little bit different here? Does he maybe go for, let's say, 2 laps of fuel, 3 laps of fuel, really short stop, no tyres changed, and try and get out ahead of Ribeiro to try and, I don't know, slow him down, try and defend from him, do something to try and win this race?
I think cutting it more in half than 5.5 is better overall, though, to be honest, because then you're just going to go back to a higher tank of fuel later on. You're not going to have any advantage. So it's a bit of all eggs in one basket situation as we're seeing Lysa get closer to DeB. We see moves here already up towards the book curb, but he's too close really to make a move. He's having to slide left, try to have a look, but no, not close enough this time around. A little bit wide actually from DeB. Manages to keep it inside track limits though, as they're both slightly under the limit there and in towards the braking zone. Lysa is getting closer. He is thinking about it, just not able to make a move there.
Certainly not, but again, it's in some close moves or close attempts coming up towards the steel Streck and of course up towards the carousel now, which they'll drop their way into. Maybe a little bit aggressive on the drop down there from Rokas to be clipping the left wheels on the flat part of the apron basically. As they work their way to the corner. Finally, our race leader has come into the pit lane then. So Colin Blankenberg down onto the lane. Obviously, the expectation is that Marvin Mackenberg, Del Rio, Sven Mackenberg, and of course Guillaume Vigneron will all be into the pit lane this lap as well, despite Del Rio and Sven Mackenberg being very close indeed. Switch between the pair of them. Let's see what the gap's going to be like between these two. Or more likely, the gap between Colin Blankenberg and Enzo Filippo. That's the more important one.
I personally think that's going to be the gap from first to Filippo going to be about 15 seconds. I think the one to Blankenberg going to be very close indeed as Marvin Mackenberg goes past for a ninth lap. I hope he hasn't forgotten, and I hope he's got the fuel to go on and complete another lap as Blankenberg exits the pit lane now. He's even ahead of Sven Mackenberg. Great in lap from Colin Blankenberg, who will be in, well, we don't know quite yet because Marvin Mackenberg is cutting out a pit stop from this race. However, he is in third for the moment, but crucially ahead of Enzo Filippo.
Oh, this is interesting how these things are working out. The strategies are starting to open up, and this is why I love the 2.4 compared to just a 2-hour race, where it'd be easy one stop at half distance, or maybe just slightly after, have a shorter stop at the end. It's just too easy. Whereas here, we have the opportunity for 2 stops. There's still an opportunity, potentially might just about be able to squeeze the 1 stop, it looks like, for a couple of drivers. So very interesting times around here at the Nordschleife, because we still don't know what is going to happen as we just approach half distance.
Yeah, indeed. There's still plenty of time left in this one to decide. I absolutely agree with what I said before. If you want to make a slightly more interesting race strategically, make the strategy awkward. If it is a simple 1 or 2 hour race and the GT3 will comfortably do an hour-long stint, then you'll be shocked to hear that all the drivers will go for an hour and then will pit and then go for another hour. Once you start making things a little bit awkward, even if it was an hour and 12 minutes, it's kind of like it's close enough that a lot of drivers can one stop. But if you want to push, then it opens it up. Sorry, 2 hours and 12 minutes, right? So 12 minutes shorter. But the 2.4 just seems to work every single time we go racing using the format, whether it's here, whether it's in Spa as well, where the awkwardness can really come out. I did say before the broadcast, I just want to say I've not spoken to them. I just want to say that I'm just, obviously that much of a player. I'm a future seer. That Marvin and Sven Mackenberg, I said they were going to do something with this strategy. They always do. They always give something a go.
I'm starting to wonder really what it means for the rest of the race, because they have gone for a one-stop, it seems, in the McLaren. Maybe that's why they chose the manufacturer. And so, what does this mean for everybody else? Well, Ribeiro is already leading the race anyway, and effectively all of the drivers in the entire field have 1 pit stop remaining. Now, you've got to remember that added on to that is the fact that both Mackenbergs will have the longest stop of anybody remaining in the race. I actually think a lot of the drivers during that last stop took on a lot of, if not all of, the available fuel space in their tanks that time round. And so that means that they'll have really quite relatively short stops for the very final part of the race. Don't forget, they can pit any time from next lap, not next lap, sorry, the one after, at the end of lap 10, and go to the end comfortably on fuel. And so that's worth remembering in a few moments' time, because I'm really not sure where the Mackenbergs can get to. They are now at 1 position further down, or Sven is anyway, as he was passed by Enzo Filippo there, and that is now 4th place for the Frenchman.
The good news is they still gain from where they started at this moment in time, and they have quite a big gap behind Sven down to Stoffmühl in 6th place. So they've got 27 seconds there to eat up. So they might might be able to still keep inside that top 5, which would still, in my opinion, be a net gain from trying that strategy. So it's not too bad of a situation if you're able to do so. But the fact that basically everyone did 7 laps and they're going to do 9, which means they've saved 50 kilometers longer than everyone else. That's a big task.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's if you're going to take any strategy gambles or whatever, it's not necessarily about winning the race or getting on the podium or whatever. It's about where you were at the start of you trying that strategy call and where you were at the end of the race. That's the important bit. That's where you know where you've won or lost. If you start the strategy call and you're in 7th and then you end up finishing in 3rd position, hey, that's a huge gain. Even though it's so easy to be like, oh, but I didn't win. Yeah, you were in 7th. So you know, it's something slightly different. Obviously, we've got a 3rd retirement for the race invites, also none of that pretty livery, or at least the pink headlights that go with it. Is once again Enzo Filippo trying to get past Colin Blankenberg. Already seen a couple of moves coming up towards Mid-curve. Could we be getting another one now?
He's been very good at it, hasn't he? So I wouldn't put it past him, including one on Blankenberg, of course. Can't forget earlier on in the race when they made side-to-side contact, but it doesn't look like he'll need to this time round. He's almost through before the left-hander preceding the Mid-curve. That is a real show of speed from Enzo Filippo, who breezes through into 3rd place. That was very easy. And so Enzo Filippo now back on the podium places again, but I think the fact he did lose that place in the pit stop cycle may worry him. He may just decide, well, Blankenberg must have put less fuel in than me then. But there's also that lingering danger, I suppose, that Blankenberg was just quicker on his outlap.
Potentially. I do reckon, though, as you said, I think it might just be a fuel difference, and therefore he might be going longer and therefore then have to take less fuel and get the gain at the next pit stop. So the fact that he's now ahead, I think, is a very good point of the race for him. He is going to have to chase down and overtake Marvin up ahead of him, which may lose another couple of seconds, so he's got to be careful with that. But looking how much lift and coaster is going to be from the McLaren, I think that should be fairly comfortable, like it was with Sven down into Arenberg.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if there is going to be any major attempts. I think we are looking at the battle for 2nd position in this race. And obviously, once Marvin and Sven Blankenberg come to pit, it will become 2nd spot. But what I mean by that is I don't believe there is any major chances for anyone to catch our race leader Ribeiro. Just too large a margin to try and close that one down. But yeah, again, you never know. One slight mistake, one bit of back marker as well. Obviously, we will be dealing with some back markers during the run of this race, and if one of them cough and splutter at any point, of course, a problem for our race leader. But Ribeiro at the moment, world of his own. And to be fair, even if the likes of Marvin Magos or even like Enzo Filippo or Colin Blankenberg start setting fast lap times, it almost seems like it doesn't really matter as Guillaume Vigneron is able to keep Nata Del Rio at the moment at bay.
It is for now, but that was late on the brakes, too late, nearly. Vigneron is pretty lucky that he wasn't punished for that. Went towards the carousel. This sort of prevents you from making any sort of move into this corner, and so sort of didn't have a very good run through there at all, did Del Rio. So that battle is going to be put to bed very, very quickly indeed. Just as another one pops up, it's Bock and Van Roon. We're running nose to tail now on the way towards the Mid-curve. Will there be a move here from the Audi? He's trying to find a space. Can't quite do it, though, into the corner. And so they will remain single file as well. Hour and 10 remaining then. And surely the pit stop of both of the Mackenbergs will be very, very soon. And that will sort of give us a bit of a false look at how the field really looks like, to be honest. Because this is legitimately where the Mackenbergs are.
Yeah, it's definitely. I highly doubt they're going to go further than this, saving an extra lap. There's a bit of a spin there on the exit from Bock. He went a little bit wide on the exit of the carousel, lost the rear end, managed to save it pretty nicely actually, but an important couple of seconds he lost because Van Rooyen's gone past, and Bock, who's already had an issue or two in this race, drops down another position.
Yeah, it did, and it's again easily done at this point to have had any mistakes. Like I say, tyres maybe not in the correct operating window, and to be fair, nor is the focus with halfway completed in this race. As Again, we'll keep an eye on some of these closer gaps. At the moment, Lucas and Ice are still separated by a very small margin. Would you really categorise Lights as BMW as being a big green monster? You're an expert in that topic.
No, it's not green enough or big enough.
Isn't the M4 bigger than the M8?
You're asking the wrong person. I try and keep knowledge of that car out of my mind, really.
I know that Laguna Seca gift gets me every time when it comes up, as we're seeing the Mackenberg brothers in the pit lane. So where do they drop out? So remember, this is their only pit stop in the race, so they're going to the end from here. So let's see how this one works out, because really how far they drop down now is going to be good. But look at the gap actually to Mish behind them. So there's a big gap for them to drop into, and they should be okay from that regard. And I think there's still potential, as I was mentioning earlier, for top fives once the drivers ahead have come in for their pit stops, but we will have to wait another, well, actually quite a few laps, potentially another sort of 4 laps.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, it's an interesting call to go for the extra lap around here. The thing is, like I say, it's going to be a lot of fuel saving, a lot of difficulty. We talk about how boring it can be to fuel save at the best of times, but to be able to navigate this circuit and doing that for 2 hours and 24 minutes, it's not going to be particularly easy, but both Marvin and Sven are certainly good enough. That's a bit more your speed, Ewan. But you can't call this a big green monster, because it's Grello, isn't it?
It's yeah, I mean, very loosely even green, really.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So
it's yellow.
I mean, it's yellow.
Well, yeah.
like flat out, it's just yellow.
But Ewan, the one you had as your avatar for ages, that was the one that was more green than this.
Yeah, that was they used to run a 912, number 912 in well, lots of races. Nürburgring 24 Hours being one of them. And I don't know what's happened to that car. I don't know why they don't do it anymore. But that used to look better, I thought. The predominantly green one. So in the places you see that car being yellow, it was green, and the places you see that car being green, it was yellow. If you see what I mean. It was better.
Words. Those are indeed words. As hooking their eyes.
So I don't know what's so funny, but Lewis has lost the capacity to talk again for the 2nd year in a row. So that's good.
It's the Cam Rogers' green screen. It's just fallen.
Oh right. Oh, I see. Okay. Well, no one can see that at home, of course, but and neither can I actually. But I'm sure it's very funny for those that can see it. So there you go. Anyway, I'll try and continue to talk about the race. Guillaume Vigneron is still ahead of Ronaldo Del Rio in this battle for 9th and 10th. Somewhat surprised they managed to find themselves behind Kasper Misch actually, but we all know that the games with strategy will have been ongoing for a little while now. After all, at the end of this lap, they can pit and make it to the end without too much hassle on fuel, so we may well see a few drivers electing to do that.
I guess it depends how you want to split up, because I still think making your final pit stop as short as possible is going to be a very important one, as Del Rio is trying to make the gap between him and Vigneron as small as possible, almost pushing the Mercedes there through a few apexes. But now we work our way down onto the next straight section. Can there be a move for this Mercedes, which is clearly quite good in this race, with the Mackenbergs taking choice of that one as they go for that one-stop strategy as who gets the run.
Yeah, indeed. Let's see. I mean, again, I know the Mercedes is plenty fast enough in a straight line, but we've seen an Audi R8 blast its way past. We've seen the McLaren be pretty decent in a straight line. Here we come up towards Swedenkreuz. Del Rio is going to go to the inside, up towards Swedenkreuz. Got the inside line going through the corner. The outside being taken by Vigneron. Manages to keep it on the road as we work down into Arenberg. Heavy under the brakes, and the Mercedes is able to keep ahead as dropping it off the road. Renato Del Rio just struggling to keep it within the limits of the circuit. It's fine. Normal service resumed for the final 64 minutes of the race, as long as Cam's green screen can hold up to the pressure of this race.
And Cam, actually, I suppose that's quite a lot of pressure. Imagine just being ordered by Cam to just stay there. That's a difficult task. That I don't want. So there you go. Fair play to the green screen. You can't blame it for relenting at one point instead. Anyway, we'll forget about that. Yeah, 64 minutes to go, and as I said, final pit stops on the horizon, certainly. But the problem and to be honest, I would advocate that for Del Rio, really, in this situation. Seems very much stuck behind Guillaume Vigneron with no real way of getting through. And as I say, it might not be what he planned to do, because he might have still laps in the tank, but it might be a better idea to come into the pit lane early and then I'll try and go as quickly as possible on the way out and try and undercut Guillaume Vigneron if you can.
Yes, I saw a move. It was as Bok got Van Ruin for P18, so that was one he obviously lost not too long ago by having a spin on the exit of the carousel, and he's now got past and is a second ahead, so the move's still going a little bit further down as well, but a move not coming the way of the Italian driver here for Del Rio, still in that 10th position. To be fair, that's a pretty respectable place. Especially in one of these special events. Top split, of course, being shown here, and difficult to get in. You'll be at a very decent level to do so, but currently just a little bit stuck there in that McLaren, and he's not close enough even to have a move into the muck curve this time.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, the splits being divided up, of course, dependent on your rating, your reputation as well. I actually don't know where I'd be if I started trying to get in this race now.
I do.
Go on.
Last.
Not here.
Well, I wouldn't be in top split, that's for sure. I would not be in top split. I'm not good enough for top split anymore. Come to me 5 years ago, maybe I would have been all right for it. But right now, absolutely not. As Vigneron is trying to keep 9th position at the moment from Del Rio as they go through Steel Strecker now up towards the carousel. Some of the greatest drivers in sim racing have made a move around the outside of the carousel. In a Mercedes, in that Mercedes, in fact, it was me.
Oh, dear.
That is a big send, though, to the inside for the McLaren.
Well, it was such a big send to the inside that he nearly fell out the inside of the carousel as well. And so Vigneron, in the end, didn't lose very much by going around the outside at all. Presumably he won't be very pleased about all of that, but Del Rio is now finally through, and you'd expect him to push on now and get away, but that was an aggressive move, but I suppose it needed to be, because you don't get round the outside of the carousel very easily. Although, to be fair, Vigneron held on very well because Del Rio was barely in the inside of the carousel anyway.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, you rarely see a move there, let alone sort of a clean one as such. Vigneron was sort of in the perfect position to use the outside line, but as you say, that was Del Rio just about making the corner himself, as we're coming up very quickly to 1 hour to go in this race. So an hour and 20 odd minutes gone, and we are having a situation where Ribeiro's leading by 13 seconds as Van Ruin brings out some yellow flags, but Filippo, of course, trying to chase him down, as there is the R8 who's had an issue in the exit of the carousel.
Yeah, not really earning the number one on that car, unfortunately, for Van Ruin. He'll be working his way back round with an awful lot of damage, but Almagna will be able to squeeze his way past probably pretty easily here as they head to the highest point on the circuit. That Audi R8 is not looking particularly ideal at the moment, as it's probably not going to be easy for Balmagna going through this sector. When you're behind a car that's damaged, yeah, it can be pretty tricky. That said, the Ferrari's pretty damaged itself.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't look fresh out the showroom, that one, does it? Even as new as these Ferraris are, not looking great on the front end. And you can also see this just in behind in the BMW as well. Another very famous motorsport livery for you there, making its way through the final sector. Or it's the final sector if you're splitting it into three anyway. So it is going to be a real struggle. You probably are going to have to wait for the dotting line hit, but we'll wait and see whether Balmagna can get through on the way down towards the Tiergarten or not, as we go aboard with the BMW now with the best seats in the house to watch this battle as we tick just under an hour to go in this race.
What a section of track this is. Look on the bottom right there, 200 k's an hour plus as they work their way through these pretty much flat out kinks, and you just have to keep it pinned even though it's blind and it's wiggling its way through the Armco barriers. You just have to find yourself a line and stay committed, and it's such an awesome part of the track there. And actually, that's Balmagna getting a bit of a run up towards the Klein's carousel. Not enough to make a move to the inside, but definitely being held up a little bit here by Van Roon, who's still trying to do something. But in the background, actually, that is a bad exit for Baumania, and Zika goes through into Galpenkopf.
Yeah, Ziska, of course, in the least damaged of the 3 vehicles. It doesn't seem like there's very much. Keep Arjuna away from it, because I know which one he'll say is the best livery on this grid, because he'll definitely lean towards that Turner BMW, which does look pretty effective. I'll add to that one. Let's see if there is going to be the move coming in from Ziska, of course, closing in. You can see the Audi R8 with the very slight crabbing coming in. We're going to go to 3 wide, though. I get the feeling as Frank Van Ryn closes up, he'll win.
He doesn't want to. Doesn't want to go 3 wide. Maybe the sensible thing, but if he's just spent the last few moments stuck behind one of the Audis, he would have thought he'd like to try and make his way through on both of them. But no, Ziska's managed that instead. He's on up to 19th place, leaving the 2 damaged cars to fight over 20th now between themselves. Do they come into the pit lane and do some repairs, or will we see them stay out? No, they will split apart though. And Van Roon goes into pit lane, and that's no real surprise. Probably earlier than he really wanted to, but left with little choice.
Yeah, well, I mean, if the car's damaged, you might as well come in, because if you think about this track, we've seen some differentials of 5-10 seconds lap between some people. If you add another 10-15 seconds onto that, you might as well just come in and get it repaired. At that point, I'm trying to do something about it at least. We come back to the front though, as Ribeiro is there. He's got the purple lap of this race, as you can see, but we are a lot slower than that at this moment in time, about 4 and a bit seconds to be precise, as they are at this point of the race with the older tyres. So we'd assume that potentially fresh tyres for the final stint in this race, but it's working out nicely at least for these guys as it stands. Because Ribeiro has had that gap for a long time now. He's under no pressure. He can just get in a rhythm and do the pace that he wants, whereas it's Filipao here on your screen who's trying to push and make the move. And to be fair, last lap he was a bit closer, but he was still 4/10 off.
I mean, look, if you want to get to the end of the race, if you want to count back to when your last stop is really needed, it's the end of this lap, right? It's kind of the first one where you can safely do it without any major fuel savings. It was 7 laps, we estimate. Oh, sorry, 7 laps. Ewan O'Leary estimated earlier on in this race. He said it was going to be an 18-lap race, so it's fine. We'll put the pressure. It was 18 laps, right?
It will be 18. I mean, it has been for the last 3 years. It's never not going to be.
Okay, so there we go. So by that's it. You can always trust Ewan O'Leary's commentary maths, even though sometimes. But there's some understandable science behind that. With that being the case, then, so 7 laps left to go is the point where you can basically get to the end of the race comfortably, which will be the end of this lap. There'll be 7 laps left in this race. So if you are burning through the fuel, kind of maybe a now or never kind of thing, especially if you want to get on some fresh tyres.
Let's see what they decide to do at the end of this lap, but I love the fact that it's so open. You were talking about it earlier on with the fact that it's just offset slightly from a regular race. We have had 2-hour races for special events in the past. We did it at Bathurst, for example. We've done it as with Zach Silver here, who's picking himself out the wall, I'm afraid to say, at the Tiergarten. He'll be making his way to pit lane, you would have thought, if he's collided with something. He certainly does do that to make it to the end of the race. But yeah, you were talking about it earlier on. It's slightly offset from the top of an hour, so it makes it just that little bit awkward. And I know you're a big fan of this kind of thing as well, Cam. It makes it that little bit awkward for everybody to figure their way to the end of the race, and it means that the strategies are very variable. As I say, there's about 6 laps of playing room basically in this strategy at this end of the race. You can either go right the way to 16 laps at the very end, or indeed you can pit as early as on lap 10 and make it to the end pretty comfortably. So, or indeed you can do a 1-stop. It's a very open strategy.
And we are still yet to find out who is going to be on what, because even though lots of people pit on lap 7 the first time round, I don't know if that means everyone's going to pit on lap 14 this time. There might be someone trying to pit a little bit earlier, just to switch things up a little bit, try something, get potentially out of some battles with some track position as well. You can see the gaps here on the tower. We have spread out quite a bit, as you would expect at this track, but still, is that everyone? Yeah, everyone's still on the lead lap though, so we haven't quite got to that situation yet, but certainly this track seems to spread out the field a little bit more, but that is just because of how tricky it is, potentially with how fast it is as well. So if you just lose a bit of time, the car just travels up the road so quickly. It's quite an interesting one.
Yeah, certainly so. And I mean, that's kind of just how things unfold within the race. Again, the different strategy approaches for each of the drivers. Things have certainly calmed down here at the Nürburgring, though, which is always the expectation. We had a lot of drama in the opening stages there, didn't we? I think the closest battle, though, is between Vigneron and Del Rio, where things remain kind of exceptionally tight between the pair of them. And, I can see that battle going at least until their final pit stop, that's maybe till the end of the race, but so certainly at least for another lap.
Yeah, it will continue on there. Got too excited about saying his name. They're getting closer again to Kasper Misch in 8th place, which you just will have seen a flash of in the distance there. The very brightly coloured Porsche will be ever coming more into view for these two. Not sure whether he's made a mistake somewhere or whether he's a bit damaged, but he just seems to be losing time at a pretty high rate at this stage in the race. And yeah, look at this, he may well have been off because the gap tumbling down to 1.5 seconds, 1 second maybe now. So Kasper Misch all of a sudden in a bit of trouble.
Del Rio wiggling the rear end a little bit more than I would like to be seeing at this point of the race there, coming down. I think that was just an awkward line he was taking, but he managed to collect it up and continue his way on in that P10 as it stands. A very close three-way battle, as you're saying. So there's still opportunities at this point in the race, and it's always good when you have that in these longer races where you get to a point where you still have a target ahead of you, because I always find when I'm driving myself, when I have a target in front of me, even if it's like 10 seconds up the road, it just makes you concentrate, just makes you perform that a little bit better than just having no one and nothing to think about up ahead.
Certainly if that gap's coming down, I don't mean like down by a second a lap or this, that and the other, but like even between like Enzo Filippo and Ribeiro, of course, our race leader, the gap's kind of coming down a tenth or two here and there. It's not coming down enough where Enzo Filippo's going to be going for the race victory, but it's just coming down enough where it's kind of keeping your mind in the game. It's keeping your eyes focused on what's happened. You're slowly applying that little bit more pressure, trying to force a mistake that realistically at this point is probably never going to come. But it's more just about getting yourself in position and keeping your eyes closed. I think you're absolutely right. Like just keeping an eye on something at this point. It's so easy to become complacent, and that's where you start saying, I've driven 2 hours of perfect driving, I've saved all the fuel, I've saved all the tyres, I've set the fastest laps that we've set all race, I've not had an incident point by going off the road, but that's when you've been. Yeah, speaking from experience.
Of course not. He goes getting Vigneron through into 8th place ahead of Kasper Misch. As I mentioned, has really lost a lot of time on this lap. It might be time for him to come into pit lane. Vigneron really steaming into the Tiergarten there, but just about makes it into the corner, and Misch does indeed go into the pit lane. So something went wrong on that lap, I'm absolutely sure of it. He may well have damage now. He certainly doesn't have an 8th place anymore. We'll see whether you can retain the top 10 though, because that's where we saw him battling throughout most of the first part of the race. It was for the last spot inside the top 10, or just around that sort of region, with Zdeněk Pech, who is just about to overtake him while staying on the racetrack. So we'll see if Misch can return to the lower end of the top 10 when everyone's made their pit stop in the next 4 laps or so.
Yeah, subject to him not having a longer stop, he should remain inside that top 10, but it depends how much less fuel everyone on the track still needs to take as well. So here is Mitch Mont with Bock in behind. They're having a little bit of a ding-dong down in Duttinghurt, and they might actually get Misch as well, who's in that pit lane currently. The first one of this final round of stops as we get to 50 minutes remaining in this race. We're on lap 12 of a projected 18 laps by Ewan O'Leary. I'll have to trust him on that one. But it looks like it's going to be pretty good. That's a completely different line for the Audi of Mitch Mont, but you can hold on to that.
I'm really enjoying how triggered Ewan's getting.
It's not me.
It's his maths. It's not his history of this race. It's only it is specifically his mathematics. As I look to the inside coming in from Bott, getting down the inside of Mitch Mont there. The pair of them going side by side on their work down into Dunlop. But of course, it'll be Mitch Mont ahead of Bok now as the Porsches looking to the inside, working their way down into Dunlop, going for the later apexes, Mitchmont, as they depart the corner and up towards the Porsche curves. Of course, a solid move, to be fair.
Yeah, it certainly was. But we've seen those moves made with quite a lot of conviction down here in the order before, and we've seen the opposite happen right afterwards, as the driver who's just been overtaken becomes the overtaker and replies with the same favour. So we'll wait and see on that one this time round. But worth noting again that a lot of these guys in this previous battle have already stopped, like Frank Van Roon, like Lisa, like Lupus as well, already having made both of their stops. And so this kind of thing for Mishmont and Bok might not be that helpful. Richmond defends on the way in towards the chicane, although we'll have a terrible run through the second part as a result. Bok can't quite capitalise on it, and he's going to find it a lot more difficult now that they're both heading on to the Nordschleife.
Yeah, this is the tough part. A huge send to the outside. Don't think I've ever seen someone go around the outside there in normal racing conditions, but Bok was half thinking about it. Has come down through Hudson back now. Definitely not a place to do so. But that is wide though from Mitchmont. He stayed absolutely pinned on the grass, able to keep control of the car, but that is certainly not the absolute fastest way to go there, but enough to keep him holding on to that position. And now they have to work their way through all the tricky curbs. The Porsche is definitely the faster driver at this point, around the outside in towards this chicane, so he can maybe not, but just slow him down as he get onto the straight.
Yeah, the final section there in the piping is we head up the hill towards Floodplatz. Very messy, to be perfectly honest, from Mitchmont, just struggling to keep Philip Bok at bay. Now as we head through Floodplatz, holding it to the right-hand side, keeping it pinned up towards Schwedenkreuz. The Porsche is so much faster than Mitchmont at the moment. There should be a move coming down here, but it's so narrow on the run down into Schwedenkreuz. The Porsche connecting to the outside as we work our way back up to the crest at Schwedenkreuz. It's going to go through the left hand, and now the outside being held by Mitchmont as we lose them behind something, God knows what. But down into Arenberg, Mitchmont loses the position. Philip Bok completes the move in brilliant style.
Fantastic overtake. Round the outside through there is very difficult to do, not least because you've got a danger of getting your right side wheels in the grass. And once you do that, you're not going to stop in time for Arenberg. It's quite an ordeal getting yourself stopped in time for that corner anyway. Never mind when you're driving down the grass, and that's tricky when you're driving on your own, never mind side by side. So respect does have to go to Mark Mitchmont as well for being respectful and giving the racing room that was required there by Bok, because otherwise the Porsche would have been sailing straight on at the hairpin and straight into the wall. And Mitchmont could have very much made that happen without doing anything too bad. So fair play to him for giving racing room, but even bigger hats off to Bok for making that work.
Yeah, that was some nice battles there. And I think the best part of that is it's respectful racing. It's hard, but it's been fair. And that's probably been the way that we've seen quite a few of these moves, actually. There's been a few door rubbing situations, but not too many have been caused into some big crashes, which is what we like to see. And I can tell you, and just having a look down the live timing, on the previous lap, Filipao was faster than Ribeiro by a whole 200ths of a second.
No way. 200. It's coming down. This is it. The gap is obviously not. Ribeiro is just in a very solid position. It's at the point now where you can tell yourself as a driver with 6 laps left to go, what will be 5 at the line. You can lose 3 seconds a lap, basically 2 to 3 seconds a lap at this point, and you'll still be okay. And once you start hitting that point, it becomes slightly more comfortable. Of course, there's only 45 minutes left to go. We're approaching 2 hours completing this race, which is about as much racing as in the real world 24 hours. That's fine, we'll move on from that one. As yellow flag comes out, and it is Zach Silver once again in that Audi R8. I think it's a fantastic livery. Nice homage, of course, to the Quattro, being sent into all the grass and some barriers around here.
Yeah, certainly. And nearly 3 minutes off the back of 22nd place, which is the next driver ahead of him, and so a pretty difficult day, and indeed being lapped now by Ribeiro, who continues on. 6 laps to go as he goes over the line now. Last lap 13.0, so clearly not quite as quick as earlier on in the race, but still just as quick when compared with everybody else. He is right on the money. And even if Filippo does the same lap that he did last time round, he will only gain mere tenths of a second. And indeed, he can't replicate that lap again. He loses another 7 tenths of a second. When you're just in this state, if you're Thomas Ribeiro here, you are going to be pretty difficult to get out of that almost. It's such a great feeling for a driver who is at one with the car, very much so, and at the moment is struggling quite a lot to lose even a tenth of a second per lap. I don't think I've seen him lose a tenth in one lap yet.
Yeah, I'm just having a look. There's only been, from what I can see, 2 laps in this whole race so far where Filippo has been faster than Ribeiro. And realistically, to catch, he now needs to be faster every lap remaining in this race. So the chances are slim. Ribeiro, the Portuguese driver, is looking very, very strong, as he has all through that qualifying session, to be honest. And then as we worked into the race, he's had control. He already had that couple of seconds gap through the Nordschleife first time around on the first lap, and we were like, oh, okay, this is looking pretty good. And this certainly worked out to be. And at one point, I mean, Ewan was saying at the 6 second gap, oh yeah, 6 seconds over 2 hours is doable, but it's, well, double that now.
Throwing him straight under the bus. Poor Ewan, goodness me. Honestly, I've never wanted this race to be 17 laps or 19 more in my life, just so we can start jumping on that one as well.
Everyone will be slowing down in a minute.
Just so that you're wrong, your maths wrong. Of course, they head their way through the Schmitz curve and back out onto the Nordschleife for the 13th time in this race. 12 laps complete, 6 expected to go. Expected again, are you that? As they head their way up the neck, up the collar of the pig's head.
What are you talking about?
I
didn't want to say it.
Sorry, can you pull up the track map of the Nordschleife and just take a little look? And if you imagine this as being like going up towards Schwedenkreuz and Arenberg, see, look, there you go up to Arenberg, which is the furthest left point there. That is the top of the neck, and then you work up towards the likes of Miss Hit Miss and Bergwerk and what. That's where you have the ears. Of course, the carousel and steel striker, that's like, I don't know, a horn or something. I don't know pig's anatomy, it's fine. Horak, that's the snout. You've even got a little bit of a mouth there, where you've got Gaug and Kopf, and the Schwabelschwanz, and of course the Trans carousel and stuff. It's a pig.
I can only see it when you've got the pink colouring in.
Oh yeah, that one I said years ago.
Yeah. Sent me a picture before where it because to me it just doesn't look like it, but once you colour it in a pig colour, it somehow does look more like a pig for some reason. So I don't know how that works, but it is true. I'm still not convinced, I believe, about the fact that it looks like a pig's head. Also, I would dispute the fact that a pig has a collar.
What? The neck? You know? Collar probably wasn't the right word to.
Yeah.
Smartest pig you've ever seen.
Yeah. It's like it's got an office job or something.
Can't say best.
Anyway, let's move away from that. I thought we were staying on topic. It's gone very well, but anyway, yeah. 6 laps to go, and it will be. I'm absolutely sure of it. I'm just very surprised that we're getting to this close to the end of the race, and we're still waiting for top 15 to come in still.
Yeah, so there's going to be, what's the lap there? We have 5 laps to go afterwards, which does make some sense, I guess. But then, as if it was what I mentioned earlier, where everyone's going to do 7.72 for those who are on the 7 laps as their full tank. So in that case, we then have one more lap after this one as well. But that is the thing that we're mentioning, how the strategy is completely open. Depends what you want to do and what the track position is like around you. So there's been some big choices for the drivers to make, and at the moment the only major ones we have to remember is Sven and Marvin Mackerberg, 6th and 7th place in the 2 McLarens. They do have quite a big gap up ahead of them, but they are going to the end. Everyone else ahead of them is going to pit, and quite a few of those drivers are going to drop in behind.
Certainly so, as we'll see most of these gaps being separated, which is the perfect time for our broadcast director Chris to say maybe even 19 laps. And I can see you typing. I would assume it's something about the fact that it's definitely not going to be 18. Even though I'm doing the calculation in my head, it will definitely be 18 laps. It's fine. It's fine. We can all maths our way around it. Just don't ever trust Ewan.
What would the pace need to be for 19? That's what you need to work out next.
The pace it would need to be for 90 would have to be extraordinary, like below 8-minute lap times, well below 8-minute lap times. That's never going to happen. What's more likely is 17, and I'm about to try and work out how slow they'd have to be to manage 17. Because I reckon if I was driving in this race, it would be 17, because I'm not nowhere near as quick. But I think these guys are more than good enough to do the sufficient pace to be comfortably in 18 laps.
I think even 17.
Accidentally.
Cam could do 17 laps. To be fair, I reckon Cam, you do 18.
No, I wouldn't. Do you know why? Because I'd
you'd
crash.
Yeah. With all this watching of that certain race in France, I was watching it on with some of your mates earlier, who you got brought up immediately because we were talking about when the first bit of carnage was going to come up, and they said if Cam was driving immediately. So
I mean, they're not wrong. I've crashed at that countryside track quite a few times, unfortunately.
We can say it on this broadcast. It's not iRacing. We can actually talk about it. It's the mod.
By the way,
dance around it.
I'll just follow on with your hint on that one. But yeah, I mean, also at this track at the North Track, I did win a 24-hour race here back in 2021. But I may or may not have been the car during it. It's just we had such a lead. We had about a 6-minute lead at the time. It didn't matter. But it's certainly a bit of a thing with me, unfortunately.
The thing I was going to mention, Cam, that certain countryside track that we're just going along with now. Do you want to remind us all of the time you entirely forgot the existence of the first chicane?
Yeah, this is why we don't talk about it. Do we talk about the time that I barrel rolled through the Dunlop chicane as well? That was a good one.
You?
Yeah.
When was that?
That was season 10. Literally, I got in the car, did my outlap, came through the 4 chicanes, went to go around the outside of Corvette into turn 1, and that's when we had the 4-wheel drive car. So you had to keep on the power for the car to turn. I lifted off, back went around, and then I did barrel rolls through the gravel.
Was that the same year that you hit the gantry on the Camel Curve at Spa?
No, that was 2019.
Which, I'll be fair to you, the fact that gantry even existed is a joke, because it's not there in real life, and it was a disaster.
Do you know why I hit it? I was sending a text.
Of course you are. Don't text and drive. Goodness me, Cameron, Roger, setting an awful example.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. You know, things happen, we move on, and that is why I don't drive anymore.
Does that work? With the law? No, it is what it is. It is what it is. You're all out of it. Is what it is, mate. It's tough. Let's focus back on the race because that is what it is. And again, we'll keep our eyes focused. There's not actually that much happening, so we'll probably go off topic immediately. Sorry about that. Ribeiro obviously leading by 14 seconds. Filippo, Blankenberg, Stoffmil, and Mikiewicz behind. They will all be coming in for their final stops in the race, probably relatively soon, Ewan.
Well, yeah, we'll see about that. See how many laps to go there are when they do it as well. I don't know. But yes, I'm slightly surprised and somewhat disappointed actually in the top 4 that none of them have done anything different from one another just yet. I guess the real risk when you're in this top 4 is that you're so likely to end up in traffic that you otherwise wouldn't be stuck in, that it's not really worth the early stop. Martin Miskiewicz, though, clearly thinks that it's worth an early-ish stop, and he comes into pit lane, although his gap back to Marvin Mackenberg is quite large. He needs it to be, though, because don't forget that the Mackenbergs are not stopping again.
Yeah, let's see, obviously, how this works, because one issue when you have refueling is by pitting early, you actually then go with a heavier car, so the overcut is normally better. So going longer is important. Of course, now there may be some tyre changing situations. So actually the newer tyres, even though the more fuel, you might be able to get a couple of seconds on that outlap. Let's see how this one works out. Here is Miskiewicz coming out, and he is going to be in that 5th place. And there is Marvin Mackenberg. So this is an interesting one. So this is the 1 versus 2 stop. Mackenberg going to the end. Miskiewicz is already ahead. So it looks like it might be that position for Mackenberg.
Yeah, exactly. both of them, Marvin and Sven Mackenberg. There's just not really going to be any. There's nothing more they can really gain in this one outside of that from Miskovic.
Yeah, I agree. Miskovic has not lost any places, and look at who's behind as well. So Vigneron would have, I guess, hoped to vault over Mackenberg in 6th and 7th, but that's not going to happen because all of the drivers from 8th to 15th have still got to stop yet, and there goes Del Rio serving his. So yeah, it's going to be very difficult for them to vault over. And I'm trying to decide as a result, Cam, whether the Mackenberg one-stop has been a good idea or not, really.
Well, they were lower down than 6th and 7th.
Yeah,
and
they were saving, so they would be, wouldn't they?
True. Yeah, I guess if they committed it to it straight away, that is very true. But I think it's still been a gain because it's kept them out of the shenanigans that would have been around the P10 position, and it's basically confirmed their P6 and 7, in my opinion.
I actually agree. I think sometimes you've got to try it, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I would say that it's not, at least thus far, right, knock on wood and all that stuff, it's not backfired realistically on them, so there is at least that. Has it gained them anything? Not really. Has it lost them anything? Not really. I think if they'd done a two-stop strategy, they probably would be exactly where they are now in 6th and 7th. So it's kind of one of those ones where it didn't really matter, but sometimes taking that risk and giving it a go, that's where you can maybe sneak a solid result. So I think in that sense, it's probably worth the risk, especially when the what you lose isn't exactly that high, as I believe Del Rio is into the pit lane.
Yep, Del Rio has come in and has spent far too long in there as far as getting ahead of Gaspar Misch is concerned. So Misch up to 15th with still a lot of drivers in the pretty near vicinity to him, having not made that second and final stop just yet. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's really cost them or gained them anything particularly, but as Cam mentioned, to be fair, you've got a much clearer run at the race, really, when you're doing a one-stop. You're around other people a bit less, so you're right to suggest, I think, that keeping them out of that battle for 10th place and those bottom-end top 10 places might have been a good idea, might have prevented them from getting caught up in an accident that they otherwise might have been. And so maybe that has just aided them to their result, but of course they haven't got it quite secured just yet. Still 32 minutes remaining, and so that's quite a lot of marks. About 100 kilometres still left for them to do yet to secure that position. So I'll hold fire on giving it to them just yet, but wonder what point we're going to be giving this one to Thomas Ribeiro, because he's got a sizable margin now, but still a long way to go in relative terms.
Probably we gave it to him at the end of Sector 1, but since then he's just proved the reason for that, to be honest, because once again he continues to just lap faster basically than Filipao. It's not like they're trading back and forward. Every single lap he is going faster and he is just holding on to that. And as mentioned, I think it's still only 2 laps of the race so far where Filipau's been faster, and one of them was the lap where it's only 200ths of a second. So realistically, Ribeiro has just had the pace, and he's obviously done the practice to be able to be consistent as well, because he's in a bit of a flow, in a bit of a rhythm around here, and that's difficult to do. And with practice around here, you have to think you're only doing every corner every 8 minutes. It's not like a normal track where you're doing the corner every 90 seconds. You don't get much practice of each individual corner here.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've seen a lot of drivers in my time where they've had like some very solid pace, and they've been able to be, even pace under questionable circumstances. Distinctly remember Tim Heinemann in the Touring Pro Series. I can't remember what it was called. I think it was Porsche Carrera Cup. It was the second season of it, and I distinctly remember around at I think it was Barbagallo. There was one by Risto Capet, of all people, someone who quite a few of us are aware of in the world of sim racing, as Balmagna's gone for a bit of a spin as they're on the Grand Prix lead. Not an ideal place to have gone for that, either way. We'll rejoin the race circuit in at 21st position. Yeah, I distinctly remember. So Tim Heinemann was the defending champion at this point, so clearly he was fast enough. But maybe hadn't done the required amount of practice. And had gone on the attack of Risto Capet, who had clearly done the right amount of practice, because Capet's pace was up there and was bulletproof. Meanwhile, Tim Heinemann was arguably at various points faster, but couldn't keep it on the road. And that's a driver who's got pace but hasn't practiced enough. Ribeiro has clearly done both because has got the pace, and even despite the difficulty of this circuit, just isn't making a mistake. And look at how close he's getting to the white line. It's not leaving anything really on the table.
Yes, and it's a show of confidence, I think, how close he's getting to those white lines, because there's really very little room for error around here at the north side. You can't really get away with stuff like you might be able to on a different circuit with a bit more runoff. You've certainly got none of that around here. You'll very quickly find yourself in the wall, so that just shows you how confident he is. He's not just bringing it home now and just saying, well, better keep it in the middle of the road really, because I'm winning anyway. Still feeling the need to push on, and sometimes it is more dangerous to let off anyway, but he's certainly not had any thoughts of that, that's for sure. As we end lap 14 now, is he going to split this first part of the race into two 7-lap stints? He certainly is, and the race leader is into pit lane.
Yeah, I guess they're all going to be in then, because 7 laps realistically is just a normal fuel tank with no saving. So I wouldn't be surprised if everyone comes in. There's no reason really to save the extra lap now. And yep, to the right-hand side comes Filipao as well into the pit lane. Slightly awkward pit lane entry actually at this track. Is there going to be someone continuing? Yes, there is for Blankenberg. So he is going to have a shorter stop, but has he lost too much time sort of saving that fuel for the extra lap, if you're not?
Yeah, of course. 3 laps to go in this race. 4 laps to go, rather. I can count because we're on lap 15. We've completed 14 laps of proceedings. So 4 laps left to go. Colin Blankenberg can realistically get to for another 2 laps. Did save enough fuel to do 8 laps on the first stint, so could do 8 laps on the second, taking to the end of the next lap, and then stop and do the final 2-lap stint. We'll have to wait and see if Blankenberg is going to pull that one off, or he's going to pit at the end of this lap. I'm not surprised he's going a bit longer, just kind of cruising. I'm going to say I think he's going to the end of lap 16, because you might as well stay out front as long as possible. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, you keep it low, keep your low fuel for as much as possible in the race. Try and maximise your low fuel for as long as possible. So that's a good idea in that sense, but it also might interfere in the battle for second place, as we've got big drama back here. First of all, the fact that Stockman is ahead of Enzo Filippo, but much worse news, Enzo Filippo's been speeding in the pit lane, and so that's going to take him out of contention for podium places entirely.
Yes, and as you say, Stoffman's got the track position either way, so it doesn't matter. So Filippo slightly longer stop, and he tried to maybe go a little bit too fast there into the pit lane, and has got, unfortunately, a speeding penalty, which is very important because, well, basically, he's now going to be outside possibly another top 5. It is a fairly decent length pit lane here.
Certainly is, and it is a bit of a surprise to have that happen, but alas, it can happen relatively easily. We've seen it a few times. So not a technical issue on the game side of things, and not a fat fingering as well from our broadcast director. We're just getting things prepared for the final moment of the race. Of course, we'll jump back into the game feed as soon as we can. Just a bit of a technical problem. It is what it is. But again, what a fantastic performance it's been thus far from Ribeiro. Continue to lead. But what drama there. Speeding in the pit lane. Naughty, naughty.
Yeah, and it's one of those avoidable things as well, isn't it? That's the most frustrating thing, I think, about it for Enzo Filippo. The fact that, he could have just slowed down a bit more and it would have been fine, and he probably wouldn't have lost that much time either. What was interesting to me, though, it's kind of disappointing, really, for the neutral, I think, that Filippo's now going to be taken out of that battle, because the fact that Stoffmill actually got ahead there, Cam, really surprised me. I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, weird. Well, I was trying to think what that could be, and it might just be with the fuel calculations as well. What they're trying to, press on the buttons to work out what it is to the end. There might just be a few seconds extra, or maybe there was so the fuel saving that they do. Maybe there's sort of half a lap left in the tank of one of them. Something like that must have potentially come into that factor.
24 minutes left to go in the race. Of course, Blankenberg is our race leader. We rejoin the in-game feed. Blankenberg leading, but will be pitting fairly soon. Don't worry too much about it saying lap 1. We are most certainly 14 laps into this race, with still time left to go. 3 laps once they come round to complete this one. Blankenberg will be pitting within the next couple of laps, but of course Sven Mackenberg, Marvin Mackenberg, those are the ones that are going through to the end of the race.
Yeah, that certainly should be. My prediction of 18 laps has gone straight out the window. That's a disaster for me. Because,
Yeah, right. 4-lap race,
on
crazy.
lap 1. Oh God, I was so confident as well. I'll never do it again. But anyway, back out onto the circuit for Michelin. Quite looking forward to seeing some of those battles a bit further down and where they all end up.
Absolutely, I think it's going to be a good one actually. With the final battles here, as everything starts to come together, is looking good though for the drivers that we were expecting. None of the strategies so far have changed things around in such a way that I'm a bit worried. It does look like, for instance, like the Mackenbergs, I think they're just going to be off the back in that position. I don't think there's too much we can do there. And then obviously up at the front, Ribeiro is just basically leading the way and looking very nice indeed. Stoffmill, though, boys, I think he's having a strong race there. He got Filipao in the pit stops, and to be fair, he kept with him the whole way through the mid part of the race as well.
Yeah, indeed. Of course, don't worry too much about the technical issues. These are our side, not the race side. So all the drivers and stuff are dealing with it absolutely fine. Colin Blankenberg is continuing to lead, but Tomas Ribeiro will be retaking over the race lead in the very near future, looking to basically dominate this race. I'd say he's got 1 hand and 4 fingers on the trophy, realistically speaking. And outside of a solo mistake, I just don't see anything major happening. But, those can happen around here.
Yeah, of course, yeah, but I think you're right, it is unlikely. I would argue that if he's got already 4 fingers on, he might as well just pack it up anyway, because that's enough, isn't it, really? He'll be fine. So just a few laps to go for him, and just not crashing is the main objective. Still interested to find out who finishes second, though. I think it's interesting you bring that up, Cam, about Stoffmill. He is someone I wasn't expecting to see up there, to be honest. Not a driver I've heard a lot of in recent times, but he's very much challenging Enzo Filippo and Colin Blankenberg, penalties aside, for a legitimate podium place.
Yeah, he's doing an amazing job, to be honest. With that one, he's basically in second place at this point. We'll have to see what the time gap is with Blankenberg when he comes out, because he is doing effectively an overcut at this point in the race, so he is going to be fairly fast. But is it going to be enough to change something around? Blankenberg there, of course, does have a bit of damage on the front end of that car, so might have a little bit more drag, slightly slower than he would have wanted. But I would assume this is going to be potentially actually not his lap. He might go one more after this one as well before making that stick. So if he does a quali lap with 1 lap left of fuel next time around, that could make it fairly interesting. He's only need 2 laps at the stop.
I know you can see the damage on the front end of this car. Don't worry about that. That will just be connection based, so don't worry too much. It's all going to be fine for Colin Blankenberg. Like I say, I think he will be going for 1 more lap after this one, Cal. I think Blankenberg will be running away, leading as many laps as he possibly can, and that would be an extra one past this point before rescinding the race lead back over to Ribeiro. Yellow flag out for a few drivers, a couple of struggles around the Nordschleife, but certainly not for our race leader overall, which will be Ribeiro.
Yeah, so that will be restored shortly as Blankenberg makes his way towards the end of another lap. Now hoping that he's got the gap required to stay ahead of the likes of Stoffmill, who will be challenging him all the way for second position. But will he cut this stint a lap shorter than we're expecting, or will he go for a second 8-lap stint of the race? To be honest with you, I don't necessarily understand going quite so long. I prefer personally the strategy of going 8, 5 and 5, but you know, it's up to these guys, I suppose. I'm not out there on the circuit, so it doesn't really matter what I think. He is carrying on for one more. He will be a 2-lap dash is the word I'm looking for at the end of the race. Should mean a very short pit stop, and that might play into his hands.
Absolutely. I think it's, as you say, possibly not the best one. I think splitting it more evenly is going to be faster overall, but we won't find out till that time gap with Stoffmill is concluded at the end of this pit stop. But what we do know with Blankenberg, though, is he's going to be very fast indeed. Well, actually, I say that, though, his last time was a 14.5, though, actually. So that is not the fastest time. That's sort of over a second off what we have seen the likes of Ribeiro doing a bit late in his stint. So it is slower to go this long because, of course, he's going 2 laps longer on the tyres, so they're going to be a little bit more worn, and he's have to save fuel a little bit as well, so he won't be able to go the absolute fastest that he would have wanted.
I mean, I agree with Ewan. I think 8.55 was probably the better strategy, but then again, it's very easy for us to say. And again, probably similar to the Mackenbergs. Of had he done 8.55, is there really going to be any major difference than going 8.82, which is obviously what he's the strategy that he's on for, and it just means you get to lead a little bit, so you get to see your name on the top of the pretty leaderboard, the left-hand side of the screen, which, let's be honest, when it comes to drivers, it's a small ego boost. Anything to boost the ego of any driver, even the smallest amount, that is all they're here for, right?
Sounds like it, I suppose. I always prefer a traditional 4-4-2, by the way, if I was to choose. But
no, I like the extra players, I'm not going to lie. That's how I'm going to win the Euros.
Yeah.
Flat out cheating.
To be honest, I think even if England had 18 players, we still wouldn't win anything. So, there you go. But anyway, that's...
You're doing better than Scotland, though, so it's fine.
Okay, that's... should be brought up football as well. Guillaume Vigneron is into the pit lane. Meanwhile, where will he be in relation to the likes of the guys who's battling with... where's Del Rio? He's a long way back, Del Rio, compared to where Vigneron is, currently in for his final stop of the day as well. I think Guillaume Vigneron's going to have enough to stay in the top 10, whereas Del Rio's going to struggle to get back in the top 10 from there.
Yeah, he is. Was he... I mean, we did see some yellow flags come out. Wonder if he was one of the ones involved in that, just dropping down a little bit more. But we'll see what the time gap is with Vigneron. But he has already come out of that pit lane. So, yeah, definitely big time loss from Del Rio at some point in this race. Must have gone for a spin and losing out. So, unfortunately, he's had a solid race, though. And that's something that some of these drivers will have to take away, is not always just about the finishing position. It's been a fairly competitive race up towards the front. We've got so many big names that we often see for the special events and the ranked events as well. Top drivers in RaceRoom, and coming out and being inside the top 10 is not an easy task.
I can see a couple of people asking in chat as well about Blankenberg's car being damaged, as to whether that is actually on the car or if it's not. Just to confirm, it is not actually on the car. It's just a connection thing, as we've had to leave. We had a couple of technical issues on our side. The car, at least as far as we're aware, is not damaged. Just a technical side. It's fine. Blankenberg is leading at the moment, but is still owing us his final pit stop. So we'll expect him to end this lap, as we'll have 2 laps left to go, 16 minutes. Well done, Ewan. Your maths.
It's not over yet.
They're going to bin it really hard.
I was actually working out earlier on, but quite how much time we'd have to be losing per lap to actually, lose a what's it called?
A lap?
Sort of lose a lap, if you like. If you want to put it like that, yeah. So I worked out earlier, it's something like we'd have to be in the 8:27s quite regularly. You know, they're regularly a quarter of a minute fast enough to make this an 18 lap race. But it does show that these guys do have to go at a certain pace to actually keep that up. And it once again underscores just how strong these drivers are around this circuit, just how pacey they've been as well. It's not just about Thomas Ribeiro, who we've talked about plenty of times being very strong in the lead of this race, but I think we've got to take your hat off to the other guys in the field as well, especially those others in the top 5, Mike Stoffmill, Enzo Filippo, Maciej Miskovic, Callum Blankenberg. They've not by any means been slow in this race either. It's just that Ribeiro has had that bit extra so far today.
It's one of those things. If you take him out of the equation, it's actually been a pretty close battle in behind with Blankenberg, Stoffmill, and Philippau for a three-way battle for the lead. Unfortunately, Philippau, of course, had the drive-through penalty, which has cost him some time and something else in that pit stop not going ideal because he lost the place. So a few seconds either way can still change things in these races, despite it being 2 hours 20 minutes, but just some small changes, which just shows you the consistency as well. I mean, unfortunately, we do have a consistency sort of counter on the live timing. Unfortunately, it gets skewed a bit because of the pit stop laps, which really add to it. But before the pit stops, I mean, we're well into the 90% mark. I mean, it's just a few percent here and there is the difference between these drivers.
Yeah, exactly. They're all running around as consistent as they can. That consistency coming from the consistency market coming from obviously the laps that they've completed, how close they are to each other. And as you're absolutely right, when you come into the pit, it's always going to be skewed. It doesn't automatically remove that pit lap, which I've always kind of wondered, because it's not the first time that I've seen a consistency percentage marker. I would like for them to remove the pit stop laps, because at least then you actually get an actual reference as to what the consistency is. Because it's not as simple as you're leading the race, you're even dominating the race, you have the highest level of consistency. That's not actually the case, because if you start off by saying, if you aren't quite as quick, but all of your lap times are close to your fast lap, and your consistency is a higher percentage, so it's kind of a bit more open. And you know me and data, I love stats. Stick it on a spreadsheet, I'm a happy boy.
Yeah, I love stats as well. Probably get some better ones for these, especially for this one. It's quite difficult to get the information from when there's only once a year. So pretty difficult to build up these things. But that's just my fault. I'm just complaining about myself. Meanwhile, Del Rio trying to get through on Rokus to be here for 12th position. I can't quite remember whether Rokus to be's made his final pit stop or not here. But anyway, he's in 12th for the moment. Renato Del Rio certainly has made his final pit stop of the day. And as I mentioned earlier, it's come out a long way behind where I was expecting him to, based on the previous stint of the race. He's a minute behind Guillaume Vigneron somehow. There must have been some form of something that has delayed Del Rio, because he's nowhere near the battle that he was in the middle part of this race.
Yeah, a minute is a long time as well. So it's not like just maybe a drive-through or a spin. There's been further issues that have gone on there, which is a bit of a shame, because he's had some very good speed. And someone who's not really had good speed today, to be fair, is Rokus to be. I mean, he's gained a lot of positions from where he was earlier, but it's still down in 12th place from a driver that we've seen leading, winning races, leading championships and such. Not the ideal position for him as he chunks the curb a little bit there. That is not what he would have wanted, and Del Rio is going to get the run here, but he's going to have to work hard here on the outside.
Yep, indeed, and well, there is going to be a switch of positions. It's a bit of a pinch as well as they head their way up the hill. I'm sure there's going to be even more between the pair of these by the time they get onto the brakes going into the Steel's record, potentially even going down into Tiergarten at the end of the Dattinger and Colin Blankenberg into the pit lane to relinquish the race lead over to Rivera as expected. By our stats, we were expecting him to come into the pit lane once more, as again raining extremely close between these two, as once again Rokus to be dipping 2 wheels in the grass.
Yeah, just a little bit wide for him there, but I think it's struggled just to keep up with Del Rio, to be honest. It's been a relatively strong race as far as pace goes for the McLaren, but not necessarily in these last few moments as Colin Blankenberg comes out the pit lane. Only 15 seconds the gap to Rivera, but that's not the important one here, Cam. I think the important one is the gap to Stoffmill, and those extra couple of laps that Blankenberg has been able to manage is giving him a much shorter pit stop than Stoffmill. It's given him a very big gap to hang on to in these final 2 laps as well.
15 seconds. Wasn't expecting it to be the gap to be that much, but clearly that is working out very, very nicely indeed for Blankenberg, who I assume didn't take tyres as well for the final couple of laps. So that is obviously a factor to take in with when the tyre stops were being managed between these drivers. But great to see the difference in strategy from the guys, and how a couple of laps could really make a big difference.
What was that accent?
What?
when you said very, very nice indeed, you put on a very interesting, not human accent, I'll put it that way.
Did I?
Yeah.
I have to listen to that one back.
Absolutely. Sounding very odd. But either way, we're on lap 17 at the moment. Of course, next up we go on to will be the 18th and final one here at the Nürburgring 2.4 hour on race. You can see Ribeiro working his way through the first sector of the Nordschleife. Again, up the neck as he makes his way up towards Flugplatz. I'm making this a thing. Okay, I'm not making this a thing. All right. Sorry.
A noise that said more than any words could do. He is really in cruise mode now, Thomas Ribeiro. Absolutely wonderful drive all day long. 15 seconds out in front, 16 indeed, to Colin Blankenberg, and just needs to bring it home from here on in to take a win in this race. And before he deserved as well, as I mentioned, he didn't appear at the RaceRoom Ranked Championship opener at Assen on Wednesday, but was involved in the pre-race time trial and was inside the top 10 during that as well. Showed his pace amongst the best. Enzo Filippo on that list as well. Martin Miskovic too, and a number of other names on this list here tonight as well. Showing himself to be a very strong driver indeed. And maybe this win will spark off a few more in ranked events in the future, because I've seen a whole lot of this from him in recent times.
Yeah, we're just having a bit of discussion about the lap car, but we're pretty sure.
No, we're not pretty sure. We're 100% sure. There's no discussion. There will not be a 19th lap. Just some trolling behind the scenes. Let's not.
Yeah, no, I agree on that, because we're going to start this with like 2 minutes to go, and then there'll be 2 minutes to do one lap. So I'm pretty certain that is looking nice for Ribeiro at this moment in time, because he's had this 15-second gap for a while now. Actually, it hasn't dramatically increased, but he's just slowly had that pace. He's still pushing a decent amount. Look at that, the car wiggling about a little bit. It's not like he's cruising out the front there, and obviously that's to be expected with the pace that he's showing.
But again, that's a fair discussion. Leading about for Chapel Flag, where we realised that Ian was right, God knows how long ago. Which, you know me, I never like. It's fine, it's okay. It is okay. Battles on the race circuit, we don't have too much. It is all pretty calm and sedate out there on the racetrack. Quite a lot of large gaps, as I do believe there has been a move with a mystical fantasy car here. Bock and Brown very close, and I do believe that Brown's actually made the position up, but in ghost mode. Obviously, don't panic, this is a broadcast thing. It's because we've left the server and have rejoined, which is why we can't see Brown's car. I can promise you that Bock certainly can. I can see the confusion.
You wouldn't believe the thoughts were going through my head there. I couldn't believe it. It was giving space for air. But anyway, it's fine. They've resolved it now. I think we're going to lose Lewis for another 5 minutes. Anyway,
No, all right.
Can't have it again. But battles further down will continue on. As I said time and time again in this race, it's where the entertainment's been, really. Outside the top 10, 15, outside the top 20 at times. There's been plenty of racing further down the field. And it's been so entertaining to watch time and time again. Mitchmont and Van Bruyn have been two very big parts of that. And they're having what looks like one last battle on the last couple of laps here for 18th place.
Around the outside was a potential opportunity, but not quite enough for the Dutch driver. He gets in the slipstream, he gets the run. Mitchmont keeping it towards the left-hand side. Is there going to be space? Oh, there is up the inside. He's having to sort of wiggle about in towards the braking zone. Oh, contact is made between the two as Van Bruyn has to slow down to make the chicane. But that was certainly very tight as Mitchmont didn't really commit at a hard left to defend to that one. He was sort of middle of the road, left the door slightly open, but not quite enough for Van Bruyn to get through.
No, indeed, but like you say, as we head to the final moments of this race, tempers will start to flare. Space will be at a premium when it comes to the battling. Like I said, expect a lot of the drivers will start maybe leaning a little bit more on one another, try and make sure they're holding on to the position. That said, Van Roon definitely faster than Mitchmont at the moment. Wonder if Mitchmont car still is fairly damaged from some earlier incidents. There has been quite a few for various ones of our drivers. Certainly been the odd mistakes. Do wonder if Marvellous Sven Mackenberg might run out of fuel here. Surely not, but
It's good job they've got a minute to fall back on then, isn't it? And they'll slow down tremendously if they're in danger of running out of fuel. Or they're just going to trick us entirely and come in on lap 70. It's really throwing me off. But I don't think they're going to do that either. They'll very much stick to the plan as Frank Van Roon now looks for a way back through on Mitchmont. And wow, he's going to try and find it at Schwedenkreuz. That would be brave. And he doesn't quite do it because yeah, you don't want to be on the outside of probably alongside anybody inside or outside actually through that left-hander up there. So thankfully they sort it out between themselves and they do not risk their cars and the rest of their races for that pass on the way down towards Adenauer Forest. It's going to get more tricky as well, running up the hill. Be single file again, and this is what we were talking about earlier on, the middle part of the circuit being so difficult to overtake on.
Absolutely, and it's crazy that they're battling so hard for his 18th position. I was a little bit surprised to see the risk being taken there by Van Roon, but I guess a race driver's a race driver. All you care about is beating the car that's in front of you. And for this time around for Van Roon, it is Mitchmont in that 18th place that he wants to get through Metzgersville, gets close, diving later on the brakes. He's definitely the faster driver at this point. But the German's putting himself and his car in the perfect places to defend as we speak.
certainly so. But you know, is that going to last all the way around? Another what, 30? I don't know about how much is left on the circuit. Let's call it 35, 38 kilometres. Can he hang on? Final lap of the race then, the final run around the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, and then of course around the Nordschleife has just begun for Tomas Ribeiro, who has been the dominant force in proceedings here in the Nürburgring 2.4H. It has been a perfect drive thus far, just one more lap to complete without mistake, and victory will be his.
Yeah, absolutely, and we know, as we've seen previously, that doesn't mean it's going to be a slow lap by any means. You might slow down celebrating on the start-finish line, but not before then. A 15.7 from him last time round has been right where he's been throughout most of the previous moments in this race. However, Mike Stockmill is really pushing on here late on. 8.11.9 from him on that last lap. He really is trying to chase down Colin Blankenberg. Obviously, we don't have a lap from Blankenberg that time round, but the gap's 10 seconds. It'd be a real task for him to catch Blankenberg. Meanwhile, Enzo Filippo into the pit lane to serve his drive-through, I think, although I thought he'd already done it, to be fair. Clearly not. He serves his drive-through now, just about hangs on to even a top 5.
And look how far behind he is from Blankenberg and Stoffmill. So I meant before that he had the drive-through as well. Like he just didn't have that pace. I guess maybe lost some motivation at that point, but very interesting that his pace dropped off. But I guess that's how the racing goes sometimes. We're going to take a look at Michkovic, who is in that 4th position, and he's now got that 10-second gap to hold on with just a lap to go. So that should be fine. And to be fair, the Hungarian should be pretty happy with that 4th place, looking how strong the 3 ahead of him have been.
Yeah, it'll be maybe disappointing, but yeah, obviously maybe thinking about what could have potentially happened in the race, as will a large amount of drivers on the grid. Enzo Filippo probably being the highest of those to think, well, I've lost out enormously in this race because of a couple of silly mistakes, down at the race start, speeding in the pit lane, etc. But you know, it is what it is. You can't count that one too badly. At the moment, the Michkovic is the highest placed McLaren, which if there's anything to take from a race, being the highest place of your manufacturer is always the positive one, even if the McLarens are potentially a little bit drab, boring. I'm not really a massive fan of this one, but I'm never a fan of the 720. It's really uninteresting.
It's not quite as good as the previous one, was that, whatever that was called.
It was, yeah, the 654 was now the 12C. 650 was pretty good.
The 12C. But yeah, the previous one to this was very good. This one, I still think it's pretty good. Just on the point of Filippo, by the way, you mentioned he's probably the only one in the top 5 who maybe could have achieved more than they actually have today. Maybe Blankenberg and Stoffman could have argued about 2nd and 3rd on a different day, but I mean they're much, kind of. There's not much change there. I think the point about Filippo is interesting though, because this is not a race in the last couple of years he's had very much luck in. He qualified on the front row last year as well, but finished down in 18th, and I'm not even sure if he crossed the line under his own power actually, or whether he DNF'd from the race, can't remember. But he dropped a lot of positions during the race, and last year was also an event where he would have been feeling really disappointed about how it actually went, and really disappointed that he could have got more from the race than he actually did. But for the 2nd year in a row, that seems to be happening. Although I think when he looks back and maybe looks at the result in isolation, almost a top 5 in one of the biggest RaceRoom special events of the year is, it's no embarrassment, is it? He's alongside some very top names in that front 5.
But he still shouldn't have got that drive-through penalty, and realistically today was a slam-dunk 2nd place for him on pace. So I think he will be feeling a little bit disappointed with that one. We're mentioning he is the 2nd highest rated driver in the system, but in general out of these ranked and special events that we do, he's therefore going to be the top rated driver, because we don't always see the driver who's P1. So I think he will be a little bit disappointed with that, especially as a speeding in the pit lane penalty is always a driver mistake as well. So that's something, if you're a perfectionist, that's something that you want to improve on in the next races.
Look, drive-through penalties can cost you an awful lot. Sometimes it can be, I'm sure, a couple of positions in this. Sometimes you can get a drive-through and then get a drive-through and then get a drive-through for 7. Who was it? Was it Ella Wrigley who did that in the rocket racing stuff before his sports competition in the UK at Nantes? I think it was, if I remember correctly. Obviously, probably one of my most memorable drive-through penalties in sim racing was 2014 Formula Sim Racing
Morgan Morand
around the championship. Morgan Morand, yeah, absolutely. Speaking playing at Cota, cost him the world championship, allowing Bonnerhouse to take his 5th title. It happens sometimes. It's an easy mistake to make, but you're absolutely right. It's one of those ones where it's 100% on the driver. No one else can be like, oh, someone else caused me to speed in the pit lane, unless they've absolutely pummeled past the line.
Yeah, and it's an underrated thing to practice, by the way. Not many people think, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to practice pit entry at full speed. But people don't think about it. You just escape back to pit lane or whatever when you're practicing on your own normally. But you should really practice going into the pit lane as well at full speed, in my mind, because it's a very important part of the race, especially around here, where you might think, well, this is definitely not one I need to practice. It's a straight run in, and I just need to hold the wheel straight and brake. How difficult can it be? But you can really lose or gain quite a lot of time if you brake at the right point, if you brake late enough, but maybe later than you think if you're doing it for the first time, maybe earlier than you think if you're doing it for the first time, because likewise you don't want to speed. But these deceptive ones where you can gain or lose a lot of time by braking at the right point, even if it isn't one of those pit entries where you've got lots of corners and it's quite tricky to get in correctly.
It's never a perfect pit entry at any track, to be honest. There's always a little bit of a nuance, and this one's actually quite annoying because it's a little bit blind actually with how you have to come behind the barrier, but also it's quite far away from the final chicane, so you are actually going quite fast by that point. So it's definitely not an easy one, but it's one of those things, is risk versus reward. Do you risk braking 10 meters later to get a drive-through penalty, or do you just brake at a normal point and lose maybe half a second or so from that point of view? It's definitely one where you don't want to throw away a race win, and that's something that Ribeiro certainly hasn't done.
It's not my favourite pit entry in the world, but it's certainly not one that I would stick in the most outrageous pit entries. But that said, the way the barrier is not ideal, but yeah, fair enough. It's understandable considering the scenario of the circuit. It's not the worst pit entry, but it certainly is a tricky one. Ribeiro, by the way, is on the Dittinger Hoa now as he's trying to close his way down to the checkered flag. Such a good performance though, Ewan. He just absolutely dominated proceedings.
Yeah, he really has. From start to finish, we saw it right from the very beginning. It was so important in hindsight to stay in the slipstream of the Portuguese driver as he tried to get away at the front of the field. But nobody could manage it. Nobody could stay with him. And he's been cruising ever since to a famous race win.
Certainly so. Into the final sector from Ribeiro. He's absolutely dominated, had pole position, cleared away into the distance on the race start. The only laps he's not led has been when Blankenberg has gone slightly longer on the stints. Ribeiro will come out through the final corner and he will become our Nürburgring 2.4H champion of 2024. A dominant performance around the green hell from Ribeiro as Blankenberg will come across the line to a very well-deserved second. Chased down to the checkered flag by Stoffmehl, could not make a single mistake in all of that one as Stoffmehl will come across the line in third. But what a performance, Cam, from Ribeiro.
Insane, just dominated the race, was fastest almost every lap of it, although Blankenberg was coming in hot there at the end. Also Stoffmehl in third with the fastest on the final lap, so he was doing a good job but not enough to get second place. But for Ribeiro, dominated qualifying, dominated the race, kept the race lead importantly in that first lap, and realistically that just set him up for the race win.
Of course, got to wait for basically everyone to cross over the line, but still Ribeiro, Blankenberg, Stoffmehl being your top three. I think driver probably focused on what was really lost, and all that will be that of Enzo Filippo. Of course, we've spoken about the issues in pit lane, but also, Marvin and Sven Mackenberg, they tried something with the strategy. It didn't quite work out. I'm sure there's a few other drivers that will be talking about the highs and lows of this race, Ewan, but again, it's just highs for Ribeiro and lows for basically everyone else.
Yeah, I think there'll be a few drivers who are pleased with their result on the day. I think, as you say, the others on the podium, other than Ribeiro, will be a little bit disappointed that they couldn't get nearer to him, but both of the Mackenbergs will be pretty pleased. They managed to pull off another one-stop race, 6th and 7th this year around. Not sure whether they both did last year or not, but they finished 6th and 11th that time round. So the improvement in the end coming from Sven Mackenberg this year to get into the top 10. Other drivers who did well to get into the top 10, including Zdeněk Pech, I would say, battled a long time early on with Gaspar Misch, who finished in 11th and just missed out on a top 10. Disappointment for Renato Del Rio. He looks like he's going to finish outside of the top 10, although hasn't finished yet, to be fair. Still got a few moments to pass Gaspar Misch before the end, but the top 10 looking relatively settled. And as I say, most of those drivers will be disappointed that maybe they weren't closer to the front, but hopefully most of them will have at least had a good time at what is a very entertaining circuit to go racing on for this event.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's not one that you'll get particularly bored of lapping. It's one that a lot of drivers in sim racing will just lap themselves. I remember when the first laser scan version of the Nürburgring of the Nordschleife came into sim racing. so, and of course, there we go. I was about to just bring this up. Free access coming soon. Oh my goodness me! Of course, it's the free access weekend, June 20th to 23rd. We know we like it when you're able to jump in, try out the car, see how you feel about RaceRoom. Get ahead of it. It is a fairly big download. So head over to Steam and download RaceRoom. It is a free download by default. Of course, you can go and get yourselves the packs and stuff, the starter packs, to get yourself back into the ranked racing, or you can just wait for the free access weekend, give yourself a go, and you can show that you're a better driver than Ewan O'Leary, which, to be fair, Ewan's actually surprisingly quick. That's fine.
Surprisingly, that's really insulting.
I say surprisingly
such a
quick as well. I don't mean he's actually quick. But, yeah.
It's a backhanded compliment, and you've now taken away the good part of it as well, so that's good. But no, you can actually overtake my rating, by the way, because I do have a RaceRoom account. I drive quite a lot back in the day. It's been a little while for me, unfortunately. But yeah, definitely get yourself onto RaceRoom. Try everything out for a bit of free access. There's so many different things to try, tracks and car combinations, that yeah, you can knock yourself out for a weekend and try everything.
Well, boys, of course, race is over. Let's get your final thoughts of the race, starting with you, and then we'll get Cam's. Well, what do you make of that one?
Yeah, an entertaining race. As I say, the main takeaways for me is how dominant Thomas Ribeiro was. That was very impressive. How little attrition there was. That was good to see. But also the battling was further down, and thoroughly enjoyed it. Sometimes it feels a bit one-dimensional racing at the Nordschleife because it all happens at the Tiergarten and it's all slipstreaming and it's all in the back straight. But that wasn't necessarily the case tonight in those battles a bit further down.
Okay.
Yeah, we had some great strategies there. We had some great battles on the track and not many DNFs. So I'd say overall that was a very successful race. And to us, I'm looking forward to coming back. And in general, the support race as well was a great addition over the last couple of years. So yeah, looking forward to 2025 when we come back to the Green Hell.
Certainly so. Well, of course, keep your eye on the RaceRoom YouTube channel for any future updates and races that we've got coming along. Keep your eye on that free access weekend. And, of course, join us once again for the RaceRoom Ranked Championship in just a few days' time. From myself, Liz McGlade, from Ewan O'Leary, and, of course, from Cameron Roger, from Captain Chris Coffey. I can't remember what it was that Dara classified him as on the RaceRoom Ranked Championship. But, of course, Chris Doe, who's been behind the scenes bringing us the broadcast. And, of course, to the Short Kings themselves, who brought us the BMW M2CS Racing Cup, Zach Sweeney and Dareth Thacker. Thank you so much for joining us here in the Nürburgring 2.4H. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.